This is going to be a big set between the two of them. Once again, the winner of this does go to finals tomorrow, but they also go straight to the semifinals at the Smite World Championship. So there's a lot on the line for these two teams here in the set. We have the Tartarus Titans get their win last time over the Jade Dragons in a 3-1. Now we get the Leviathans and the Camelot Kings. And I think you're right to highlight here that these two teams play a very different style than what we saw, I would even say, out of kind of both of those teams similarly.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they play their own style right now. Both junglers being so bursty a lot of the times with these mace builds straight into this percentage pen. You want the protection, or you want the protection of a Capri on your side, especially if you're playing like in a mobile mid laner or a scaling mid laner, like, I don't know, Chunga or Hell or anything else BMT might pull out. We've seen him play the Hunters as well previously. I know he can play Ullr. I've seen him in ranked. I know he can play AMC and things like that. So I think if Hell's gone, we're probably seeing BMT just late picking, unless they put the priority on Zeus.
Yeah. Picks and bans, game number 1 of our best of 5 semifinal between the Leviathans and the Kings starts up right now. And the first two gods taken off the table are going to be Geb and Yemoja, so prioritizing a little bit of that support more than anything. And I think that these are two teams where you really can put a lot of focus on the support. You don't want to give Rongyu Yemoja. It's one of his premier picks. You also don't want to give Genetics anything. I mean, even before Genetics was here in studio playing on, the NA ping, he was still playing some of those big wild card gods, and they were seeing upwards to 5, 6, 7 bans on just this one player alone.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of the times the Yemoja wasn't even included in that list because Genetics did start playing it less when he was on the high ping. And it's one thing I heard Twig say on his personal stream is that now that they're here, they can finally practice those gods again. So already it's taken off the board by Kings this time, so they respect the god for sure. But Hell, like we said, nope, still open. I was going to say still open, but there it goes, banned straight away. But yeah, the Geb, the Yemoja first, both very safe supports, both very good in the current meta. And already a lot of these scaling gods taken away, apart from Izanami, who's a very early game oriented god.
Yeah, it's going to be Hell, Yemoja, and Izanami Geb. 2 more bans left between these two teams, and it can really just go anywhere. So far, it hasn't been much of a meta adjustment in bans as far as they're concerned here. It's still a lot of the standard of what these teams have just been playing up until now. The Zeus is still open, though we didn't really see the Kings show any favor towards that yesterday. Even the Scarabs didn't really care too much about that mid lane selection. But with Leviathans having their final ban ready to go, we could see maybe one more shot over towards Genetics, or maybe a shot towards Netroid again. But it will be the Khepri, so making sure to make one kind of adjustment that seemed to be a major pain in the butt for the Scarabs.
Yeah, and so far these seem to be, apart from maybe the Izanami, just very meta bans. A lot of the safe picks taken away. Already, I think I would lend this game to be more of a scrappy one. When you take away the Geb, the Capri, the Yemoja, the Hell, they're all safe gods. Odin as well, they're all safe gods. So there's a lot more vulnerability on the battleground this game than what there normally would be if all of these gods were open. Artio though, still some sustain coming out from Leviathans. She will get the pressure in the solo lane, so I think Kings have to match that to a certain extent. See Twig's laughing about it, so maybe they have something in the pocket. Maybe they were expecting it. Maybe they had a little bet going on who picks Artio first.
I think the last time that we saw Twig laughing when an Artio got locked in, we actually asked him in an interview, we're like, man, we saw you start laughing really hard when this Artio got locked in. He says like, we knew they were going to play it. We were so happy that we get to play up against the Artio, but being a little bit glib about it, they now have to face off against Artio. But they've locked in the Yola and the Xing Chen, which has been showing a lot of success this weekend. Tell me a little bit about the Xing Chen. I know we saw a lot of buffs come his way, but is there something else with the Xing Chen that's just making him so potent?
I mean, a lot of it is when you take away a lot of these top supports, it kind of becomes the Wild West. You just pick whatever's best for the situation. And when they see the Artio, they pick the Yola Xing Chen. Both have to make Artio get beads. She can't beat them both. She's going to be on cooldown sometimes. So when Artio is best, it's when she can just stay in your face and be unkillable. But she cannot stay in front of an Yola and a Xing Chen forever if she doesn't have beads up, so she will get punished. Same with the Yarling Shen, we're going to make him go beads in the early game as well. If he goes blink, then instantly he becomes a target in the jungle for the Xing Chen. But if he's linked to the Aphrodite, it's going to be a lot harder to abuse the fact that he doesn't have beads, whether it's on cooldown or he hasn't bought it yet.
And then an Ullr for a last pick out of the Kings before we jump into the second phase of ban. So Artio, Erlang, Afro makes a very strong 3 start here out of the Leviathans, but going up against Olorun, Xing Chen, and the Ullr, which we did see BMT pick up yesterday in our 5th game in that best of 5 set. Something we didn't see pretty much the entirety of the year from him, but now that both him and Genetics are here on ping, as mentioned, they get to start playing some of these more high skill cap, less worrying about ping dependency, I should say, kind of gods.
That's right. And And I don't know if they're overstepping in that regard. I mean, Ula's definitely a great pick, but it's Brave into an Aphrodite, a very like single target. If an Aphro gets a good ult on a good axe, then that's completely nullified. Obviously, one's a much longer cooldown, but it can be really impactful in a team fight where you're only getting one good axe. Having that one good Aphrodite ult completely nullifies one of the mid picks. It is somewhat safe against an Erlang and decent against an RTO as well, so it's going to be hard for their front line to stand in front. And then we're seeing a Hachiman as well, and instantly a Nike man. They didn't think about that at all.
Yeah, the Nike's been one that's kind of been sneaking by a few teams just because, I mean, look at all the rest of the priority that's thrown out here. Geb, Khepri, Yamoja, Odin. Sometimes it can be hard to kind of squeak that Nike in through there. Since they've already got their solo laner in the RTO, want to make sure to take away probably one of the more annoying gods to deal with at all aspects of the game, whether it's the laning phase, whether it's your double hunter, because, well, Nike's one of those gods who doesn't really care about hunters. Throw up that barrier and, well, who's going to walk through here? Yep. Opposite side there with that Hachiman just taking some safety away in that duo lane. Still one more ban up for both of these teams. We have seen Heimdall banned a little bit this tournament, kind of during these playoffs. We'll see if the Kings maybe elect to ban him here. Is there something, though, even after we go through these bans, maybe kind of what's the next step here for the Kings in their draft?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Nike ban from Leviathans is kind of surprising. I guess they just don't want to play against it, but I don't think Afro cares too much about a Nike. She's not threatened much. And clearly, if they wanted Nike, they could have taken it top 3. They could have taken it over Ula, which probably wouldn't have been banned. So I don't think they really mind the fact that they don't have Nike as an option. Like I said before, Variety is a very flexible player. He might even be on the Xingqian as well, so who knows. And then the Ganesh. I guess this one confuses me. Look, I underrated the god, and clearly last set I was wrong. Eventually it did end up getting a loss, but until then had 100% win-loss on playoffs, which is a huge stat to have in such an important time.
I mean, which is wild considering how much, I'm just going to throw from what I was seeing on Twitter, how much slander was thrown towards this god, especially by players like PVM, and the fact that he's getting picked up so much and showing success. I'm not sure what that big extra factor was, but Ganesh has been working. Gets banned here alongside the Dodgy, and then a Gilgamesh out of the Camelot Kings. Seems to be one of the... Oh, no, I can't say one of the only because there's the Erlang Shen right there. It seems that even though we move towards this assassin-style meta again, a couple of these warriors are still sticking around. Yeah, it's
interesting to see Twig go for it because he did play a lot of Humbats yesterday. Maybe he decided that was a little bit too slow of an early game to pick this game, so he's got for the more scrappy play of Gilgamesh, but still the big teamfight ultimate. But he's speaking of teamfight ultimates, they've just gotten 2 massive ones on Leviathans, and at this point, I think Kings kind of need to make it scrappy because I think before this Afro, before this Artemis scales, they need to get some pressure down, but that's going to be difficult into a Sylvanas lane, into an RTO lane, into an Erlang Shen jungle. I think they balance their team comp really, really well, and I believe I was right about it being a Xingqian solo, but we could see a spicy Ymir.
That has struggled in these types of tournament events. The addition of Zapman, I think it's made them feel a little bit better, but how good would it feel, really, for both teams? You get to take a weight off, take a break for a little while, and get ready to go. 1-2 sets away from winning the Smite World Championship.
I mean, that makes you just 3 or 6 games away from winning Worlds. Like, that is not a lot of games that you have to win. So certainly a huge deal between these 2 squads. And I think for the Leviathans, like you mentioned, just getting that confidence and knowing that they can win these absolutely huge sets would be a big boon for them. And that addition of Zapman, like you mentioned, has been huge.
Now, we've seen, I think, improvements in that area for the Leviathans. The story for all of last year and maybe the beginning of this year were the playoff issues. They went through phase 2 playoffs. They make it far into that tournament. Nice double stun from Captain Twig. Doesn't result in much. But I think now, you know, that was the story. Might still be to an extent, but I think the Leviathans, as players and maybe even as viewers and fans, have started to quell some of that. You know, I think the confidence has returned for them and for us and their ability to push forward. I was the only one that predicted them to win this weekend.
That is true.
Were you Kings? Somebody else was Kings.
No.
It was J-Mac and somebody else said Kings.
I thought the Titans were going to win.
So I'm brawling it out with a couple of the other casters here. Titans have a real good shot tomorrow to win. Camelot Kings, though, I think adaptation aggro is the name of the game here this weekend.
He doesn't go with that sovereignty quite yet, so not really sure exactly where he's going to go with the build ultimately, but for what it's worth, having Shinto there ends up being that much more of a safety factor, knowing that Aphrodite ult can really throw a wrench in your plans quickly.
Uh-oh, Captain Twig, he'll blink forward. CC immunity, and perfect from Zapman. And the wall on the other end from Wrongyu will lock down First Blood. Panatom, the heal, ticking away. and Shinto keeps his jungler alive. The 9 turns blessing, the heal popped in there as well, and a well-executed jump in from the Leviathans gets first blood.
Yeah, I don't know that Zapman would be the guy that I'm trying to set behind early in a big game, because he has looked so good in these do-or-die sets, the ones that matter the most. Zapman in the World Finals has looked really strong, and he just makes a perfect play. Use that CC immunity.
Oh, but Panatom has hung around here, and Netrioid from over the wall drops the damage, and the Kings are able to answer back very quickly here. A slow connects on a wrong. You double root on the back end is great from the Sylvanas. And maybe you just call that an overstay from Panatom as the Camelot Kings are able to even the score.
Yeah, he wanted to get that purple buff invade off, but didn't come up in time. So a little bit unfortunate timing there for the Leviathan's jungler, and ends up just overcommitting to his timing. And that's the thing about Oleron, is what makes him a lot better now than he used to be. It isn't just that spectral armor change to not affect his crits, though.
I think early season 7, that's all we saw.
That's right. Dark days.
Well, it's fun for the Magical ADC players. Less fun for just about everyone else, but now at a point where you can get some value early in the build. Still objective shred, though. Remember, Erlang Shen plus Mannequin Scepter will still help you out in dropping these objectives quickly, and there looks to be no answer from the Camelot Kings. Great ward coverage for the Leviathans, covers all their bases.
Over and get a little bit more guaranteed vision for your hunter.
Camelot Kings free up some of that ward coverage. I wonder, though, as this game goes on, you look at the dynamic that is double guardian between Variety and Genetics, Tings and Netrioid. As they scale up, you imagine there's going to be big damage numbers coming from Tings and Netrioid as this game goes on. I'll hold that thought as Panatom is going to try to get things going early. Big man Tings uses the beads, backs away beneath the tier 1 tower. Panatom has the heal coming in just a moment's time, and that extends his life a little bit further, but good disengage ultimate from Rongyu as the Winds of Shamash swirls around in the mid lane, but enough sustain and delay from both sides keeps everyone on the map.
And this is just the problem now between both of these 3v3s, that it's so melee based though. Yarkor may have just wandered into a bad spot, but he's a level 11 RDO, and Variety knows that this is not a fight that they can end up taking. Is that the 3v3 for the Leviathans just doesn't have that range damage.
Genetics chipped away, and you're going to need some of that range damage to finish off the kill onto the Amir, but it's not there. Shinto does not have Undying Love, but that's a great wall from range from Genetics to keep this fight intriguing. Captain Twig drop kick, see you later, Rongyu. As the re-engage from Panatom finds its way on the back end of mid, but watch out, Zapman in the boar will add another.
Easy rotation in from Zapman makes it 2 for 2 on the kill department, with the jungler going down for the Camelot Kings. Both deaths onto Captain Twig. And that's just kind of par for the course for the way the Kings want to play. They want Twig to be that first spear on those initiations, and his damage was solid. I mean, he goes for Serrated Edge right afterwards.
Anti-heal, you might need to worry about some crit at some point here. If Zapman is going to build into crit here on this Artemis, Camelot Kings, they're in some build debt right now. Maybe an Oni Fury would help you catch up in the gold department, get that build online a little bit quicker. 50% of the way gone, but the Atlantis Leviathans are in range. Sanctified Field is out from Netrioid. Panatom's gotten a kill elsewhere on the map, and the Camelot Kings grab themselves the Oni Fury on the right. Looks like it was a 2 versus 2 that the Leviathans came out on top of, but on the left, the Kings were able to get the objective.
And that's just good play by the Kings. They know that if we just get an opportunity to start it, Sanctified Field doesn't last that long necessarily on an objective fight like this, but if the objective is below half and we can drop it as a secure tool, then it's going to be really easy for us to snag this. So good play, but Panatom is able to hunt away.
Camelot Kings steal away the Pyromancer at the last possible moment. Will Variety pay for it with his life? He goes back in with the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, gives a kill on over to the Atlantis Leviathans, but both neutral objectives in the last minute or so go over to the Camelot Kings. And you're thinking, Dave, the Leviathans got 2 kills, but the gold doesn't care about that at all. It's actually shrank in favor of the Camelot Kings. That team gold has brought things back closer to even. Now we get to see what happened on right while the Leviathans were on the Fury.
Yeah, that cripple from Yarkor just absolutely devastates Twig. You already used the beads, so it means the CC chain all through the team fight. And whenever they get the Netrioid, they'll spread out a little bit, get around the edges of the Sanctified Field. Hopefully our relics are still up for it, and we'll just kill everyone else.
All 5 of the Leviathans have beads. That'll help walk through some of that engage. Plus the bubble, as mentioned for Panatom. Fire Giant, first of the game, started up sub 20 minutes, but it's immediately been dropped As the Leviathans surge in, they found Genetics, but the wall of the Sanctified Fields has got 2 of the Leviathans stuck in place. Undying Love used onto Panatom, who will back away from this engagement. Panatom half HP, say the same for Genetics, but the ultimate advantage, Sanctified Field's a big one, but it's in trade for the 9 turns Blessing and the Undying Love.
Yeah, that's, I mean, to get that Sanctified Field down and the Ankh as well from the Kings, I agree with the Leviathans. This is a good fight for them.
They're going to pull the Fire Giant yet again. Captain Twig has to walk forward, and he
Good
will
pin.
jump away. Great pin for Panatom over the wall, but it's Hardcore all alone on the backside of this fight. Now, the Winds of Shamash does so much for the Camelot Kings in slowing down the re-engage of the Leviathans. Wrong you, stunned in place. Panatom has found the backline, but big man Ting's kiting back.
Oh.
No problem. Massive ultimate from Wrong you is the re-engage for the Leviathans, and the Camelot Kings want nothing. Hardcore gets a 4-man stun. 2 of the kills over to Shinto. 3 of the Kings left running.
It's almost like the Leviathans want to just death ball at you, and you won't have a lot of answers if you don't have Sanctified Field, and that's exactly what happens. Sanctified Field doesn't get enough. They drop it a little bit too early when everyone still has beads. The Leviathans reset, re-engage, and without Sanctified Field, there is just not enough answers to take down this healing of the Atlantis Leviathans, because remember, you can't double stack the brawlers. You're only getting... And the Leviathans, again, all they have to do, the trap that they could fall into now is that, oh, that team fight was so easy. Let's just keep doing that. But you really can't death ball until Ankh is down and until Sanctified Field is down. Once those 2 cooldowns are down, the Leviathan should win the team fight easily. But they have to, someone on that team has to be saying, hey guys, we won that fight so easily because we baited Sanctified Field. I'm sure it was a discussion coming into that team fight that, hey, we got to be careful around this. Once it's down, back up, and then we'll re-engage. It's someone's job to remind everyone of that in this moment. Remember, we're going in until Sanctified Field gets dropped, then we're backing up, then we're re-engaging.
Panatom is around behind 3 members of the Kings, and the health bar of BMT is gone. Lovebirds nearly get the kill. Wrong you does anyway. He is back in his own base, and he dies alone under his left side Phoenix. And now the Camelot Kings fighting without their mid laner, the Leviathans. There's blood in the water, but you got to go back for the tier 2 first.
Yarkor again, 1v4, and everyone just turns to run, and they're correct to do so. Leviathans that time still won the fight through the Sanctified Field. Right, he does have Ankh, and he's got to get a good one here.
Has to, and it's got to be huge because BMT is down. You're fighting a 4 versus 5. If the kills roll here for the Leviathans, a game 1 victory around the corner. Good damage onto Hardcore. Stun and wall will force speeds out of the RDO. Twig jumps away as Panatom making life difficult on the right side of the Phoenix. BMT 15 seconds away from respawn. A little bit of damage finds its way in under the Phoenix.
So this wall is going to create so much space now, and Yarkor doesn't have beads anymore.
No blink anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be harder.
Winds of Shamash down for Captain Twig. That'll slow down Shinto, and that's an early Undying Love. Playing things close, playing things safely are the Leviathans. Now a big piece of protection missing. Ankh does get used by Variety. Maybe that's why you see the disengage. And you look at that, you say the Kings were able to repel a Phoenix, which is good for them. Leviathans still were able to spool up a lot of gold.
I agree. I think that the Leviathans did, get to a pretty strong point now coming into this Fire Giant fight, but the Kings are still close. And
they are.
It only takes 1 Sanctified Field to instantly win you the game. And between an Oleron and an Uller, their objective DPS on something like towers is much, much higher than that of the Leviathans.
I was wondering how quickly the Leviathans would look to pull this. Panatom's got his chin size. Zatman will shred this objective as well. And the Leviathans immediately go to it. The Fire Giant going quickly. Camelot Kings have to close this gap. The Leviathans drop the objective. It's a pull back in onto Genetics, who has not been able to get anything off. Into the Shards of Ice he goes, and the Ymir will live on. Sanctified Field just backed away by the Atlantis Leviathans. Taunt no good from Panatom. Pyromancer is now eyed. BMT, I was going to say he holds on to his ult, but that's a bit of a non-statement there. Wrong you, really the only one that's not a stance changer that still has his ult going into this fight.
And again, Sanctified Field is down, Curse Ankh is down. Thank you very much. We'll be taking the next fight for sure. Love this aggressiveness.
Fire Giant down to 50% HP. Yarkor knocked up on the right side of the fight. Fire Giant dropped yet again by the Leviathans as Twig jumps on out. Wall just secures the disengage by Genetics. But it's a blink over from Hardcore. He finds his way into the back here. Stun onto Variety. Suppress the insolent from Zapman. Slows down the disengage, but the Kings are able to do so anyway. Now you're just waiting for these ults to come back up.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Leviathans aren't just trying to pull them a little bit deeper in. just do the objective.
Ooh, whirlwind of rage and steel from Variety is out. Pull in from Rongyu. But Variety will leap away nonetheless. Fire Giant continually chipped away, but not fully committed on by the Leviathans as the Camelot Kings have been close enough by. Captain Twig wins of Shamash, almost there. Variety into the Fire Giant pit. Now the Leviathans scattering on out, but look at the damage that Zapman's done. Fire Giant is reset here. Variety, goodbye. As a killing spree from Zapman makes its way in. 27 minutes into the game, Zapman with the double, but the Kings have secured the FG. The Leviathans, they need to get these last couple of kills, and they're able to at least get one.
Twig and Ting's the only two left standing. Genetics, I thought he was trying to kill Panatom with that Shards of Ice, but he had eyes for the bigger prize, which was that Fire Giant, and he did manage to steal it away, but it loses 3 members of the Kings. No wave coming here for the Leviathans, but they've got 20-plus seconds of 5v2.
Netrioid is gone for a good amount of time here. You have to look there as well. 30 seconds without your Ola and the Sanctified Fields, all the damage that he's able to provide. And no surprise that there's not a big commit here from BMT and Captain Twig. And that's
a waltz on out of there, and he's not tanky. You know, he's got a little bit of extra HP from the Ethereal Staff, a little bit of extra protection from the Lotus Crown, but those numbers matter a lot in the early game. They don't at all at 33 minutes.
Nope, get back. And the Lovebirds from Shinto, especially the Obsidian Shard completed in his build now, be doing more than their fair share of damage. Yarkor has found the double stun and the beads off of BMT. And goodbye to half of the Ullr's health bar. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel out once more. But it's again a disengage from the Kings. A wins of Shamash to secure that disengage. The Leviathans did, again, spend some ultimates. They come up empty-handed, but they're able to force out some important moments from the Kings.
Yeah, Zap used beads.
But it's a Variety, maybe caught out. Winds of Shamash only tickles out onto a couple. It's the Sanctified Fields that separates out this fight. Zapman on a rampage now as the Camelot Kings lose their solo laner. You don't want to lose your support as well.
Should be Pin coming up, but Twig went in and went out just as fast. Zap found himself a double, and Genetics is next.
Who needs the FG? We got to fight. The Leviathans, they've come to play in game number 1. Zapman might end this game with a quad. He will, in all likelihood, end this game undying, and the Atlantis Leviathans rolling over the Camelot Kings from minute 1 to minute 34.
That was just dominance by the Atlantis Leviathans. The Camelot Kings had some team fight presence a little bit, a good Fire Giant steal, but it was never going to be enough. 8-0-5, top of the player damage chart for the Mr. Two-Time.
You think Zapman's feeling himself a little bit here, Aggro?
Like I do, yes.
I saw him in chat earlier on today during our first set of it.
They had a pretty quiet early game, apart from that one left lane fight, because they just don't have to push their lead. They had like a passive maybe less than 1k lead, and they just get to 15, 16, 17 minutes until they can finally group up with Zapman. He's got the crit online. Look at him go now already, and just getting 2 kills off the start, it feels great for your Artemis. The sooner he can group up, the better. And then once that healing's online, which is generally around 2-3 items for our Sylvanas, our Aphrodite, you're basically unstoppable, except for that Ola ult, like I said. And if you can deal with the Ola ult, you can deal with pretty much anything Kings has to offer as long as they don't get an early game lead.
Panatom gets an 8.0 KDA and 8.5 KDA out of Shinto, a 10.0 out of Zapman previously through. A lot of, or I should say, a little bit of dying out of Leviathans, but not a whole lot. A lot of the combo that we saw at the Leviathans was, or out of the Kings, I'm sorry, was to drop Sanctified Field and then Genetics throw up a wall to try and prevent them from walking out one way. But there were a couple of moments there where it actually ended up catching out one of the King's own teammates. I remember at one point we even saw Variety get caught on the wrong side of the wall, and he ended up just getting thrown to the sharks here.
Yeah, credit to Rongyu for that Sylvanas pull as well. I mean, you've got the jump on Xingqian. You can't jump away from a nice pull from a Sylvanas like that.
It's going to be Leviathans up here. Game number 1 with the win. 26, nearly 27,000 player damage out of Zapman. 26k just about out of Hardcore. A couple of close calls here with the Kings and their player damage, but not able to quite secure that same level of kill. It just seems that this healing, which I think is the more stark number to look at, nearly 17,000 healing out of Shinto and 13k out of Rongyu. One thing that you and I were looking at kind of in the green room as we were watching the game was that there was,
game, like I said,
game number 2 underway with the picks and bans. This time the Kings elect to go first pick. So maybe we see a couple of adaptations when it comes to the picks and bans. That's always been the name of the game in these best of 5 sets, has been how do you change up from Game 1 to potentially affect the remainder of these sets? Odin and Geb are the first two responses. No changes between these two teams as far as those first bans are concerned. Do you imagine maybe the Kings try and set up a different strategy here now that they're on the first pick side?
I feel like they could have and maybe should have, because it is a little disappointing. You just play into a full team of healers and then you ban away on first pick what is one of the best anti-heal gods in the game, which is Odin. So it looks like they don't want to play that Odin for whatever reason in the solo lane. So I guess they still have to worry about these healing comps they're going to come out of. They banned one healer, which is Umojo. Banned last game, like I said. So far, we're just seeing a run back.
Yeah, no real differences just yet. Leviathans, they'll ban away the Khepri, so a lot of similarities that we saw in the first round of bans. They banned that third slot, at least. But the Kings now want to try and answer back to some of that healing. They'll take the Aphrodite off the table, Shinto, while putting out a decent amount of damage. I mean, when you have a single target healer in Aphrodite putting up 17,000 healing, that's just a problem you've got to get rid of.
Yep. Well, the AoE healer is still on the table, and not anymore. But except Sylvanas, I guess Kings could take that for themselves if they want to go down that healing route. I think it could be valuable to take away from Leviathans, but at the same time, Leviathans have been playing that style and practicing that style clearly with how well they executed the last game. That also means they should know how to play against it. So far, Kings have gone the RTO first pick. They laughed when it was open and Leviathans first picked the last game, so I guess maybe they gained some respect. We'll see if they respond with the Sylvanas and just kind of go the same route, but they are missing already two of their healing gods that they had last game.
Yeah, a bit of respect towards Hardcore here as he was getting multiple, 3-4-man stuns on this RDO, blinking. I mean, there was a point, you and I were laughing because he blinked forward past a wall. The entire rest of his team is sitting behind the wall going, dude, we can't do anything, but he ended up barely even taking half his health and damage. Leviathans will respond to this RTO, at least with their first pick being that Camelot, and then a Sylvanas right after, so they are going to get some of that AoE healing back on their side.
They are. There's definitely going to be less healing available than there was last game, obviously by the bans and them taking the RTO away, so you could see Shinto on something like a Chungar if they want to go the anti-heal and healing route. You could see him go for something like a Morrigan and transform into that Camazotz. You don't have to worry about the Erlang and the RTO as much at that point. And Camazot's very good into Olaron, so make it 2 and they might just go the Morrigan. You also could see something like a Cthulhu into that Olaron as well. Decent matchup into the RTO, but nope. They're just going to put Zapman back on the Artemis and see how he goes again the second time.
I mean, when the man goes 8-0-5, I'm not going to question if he wants to play 2 Artemis games in a row.
That's right.
Do you think maybe the Artemis picked up a little bit early in the draft? When we saw her kind of rise up earlier on during a couple of the phases, and then we saw some of the weaknesses exploited. You know, she's fairly immobile. She gets caught out really easily. Do you think it's risky picking up Artemis before the second round of bans and all that come through?
Yeah, normally you would say it's risky, but if anything, it's just telling, right? If they're worried about the Kings banning it away, so they need to pick it now over something like I mentioned, like a Morrigan or Cthulhu or something like that. If they want to go that route, then they seem to be very highly prioritizing this Artemis and don't want to get it banned away. So it should be something that's notable for the Kings coach Biggie, and if he wants to ban it away in the future, he can. But like I said, they missed the opportunity for that Morrigan, the double Camazotz into the Olaron. So again, they do highly value this Artemis if they're going to allow it to, like a Morrigan, to get banned over it.
And talking about the Morrigan, it's actually the Kings who make sure to ban that one away, probably because there is still the threat of Morrigan and Cthulhu as a combination that could have come out here by the Leviathan. So it will be Xingqian and the Morrigan banned away, and the Ganesh, which we've seen a lot of success of this weekend. Up until the very last game and last set was undefeated, but will be banned away here. So that locks away some of the support picks. Even though Variety was the one who took the Xingqian, we've been seeing a lot more towards that support role. And now with the final ban of the Kings being that Nike, which again is something that they kind of banned out last time around and went, and actually it was the Leviathans who banned the Nike at the tail end of it all here. Where do Leviathans go from here?
Well, in the solo lane, I guess you start to look towards something like a Mulan or a Cerberus, but they're going to go back to the tried and true Tiamat on Leviathans. So they've taken away the Morrigan, like I said. The Aphrodite was taken away earlier in the ban, so you just fall back on the old trusty Tiamat. We just saw Paul put on a show as well, so it's still good. It's not necessarily seen with the book build, so we're seeing a bit of a different meta out of these two teams, which I guess we expected. But still, one thing left is the solo lane pick, so it could be a flexible Camazotz as well into the RTO.
Looking over here at the Kings, they've got 2 final picks before the Leviathans have their chance at a counter pick. think it's right to highlight some of the flexibility, the Camazots we saw. Harry, aka Variety, pick it up earlier on in the tournament. We've seen some of these assassins kind of making that return towards solo lane a little bit tankier, still do a decent amount of damage. Tiamat here for the Leviathans at least gives that mid lane safety. And it's one of those gods who, I think Aggro is right to highlighting, and throughout the entirety of the weekend, she's not a god who really utilizes the book build, but book build be damned. I don't think anybody is caring if a Tiamat gets locked in, if that build works, whatever. As long as this god is doing the damage, lock it in anytime.
Looks like Kings are going away from the whole team fight stage. They're like, all right, well, what if we group up faster than you and we can do objectives? They're going with the Fafnir Oleron, and again, there's the double hunter with the auto attack speed from the Fafnir 2 on the Erlang Shen. Probably see some executioner from Erlang, maybe even Stoke cutting. Leviathans are laughing. I guess they maybe expected it.
How do you kind of feel about this Neath? Because we haven't seen a whole lot of success out of this god in the mid lane specifically. And we'll come to the Cthulhu here in a moment, something you kind of talked about, being able to rush down this Oleron.
You don't have beads going into it, but still, you have some good options with that Neath ultimate to force the beads, force the ultimate, whatever it may be. I think the Kings have to put a little bit more pressure on Zapman in this game, not just in the laning phase, but in the team fights as well.
I imagine we expect then that's where most of these World Weavers end up going. You know, Hardcore doesn't have beads, but will have the Descent into Madness.
Who cares?
I imagine most of that pressure will find its way on the left. Don't want Zapman to start feeling himself in these sets, in these team fights, because things do start to roll downhill. Some fighting already here in this lane. Netrioid with a bit of a knockback there, but he's left alone. Rongyu walks forward, continues dealing the damage. Beads out from the Sylvana. Suppress the Insolent out from Zapman as well.
Dead.
And Netrioid now just bouncing back and forth in the Draugr pit. Rongyu knocked aside. Captain Twig rotating into the left side of the map here, playing forward. His eyes are on the Sylvanas. Genetics locked in place, and Netrioid staves off death. It ends up picking up first blood as well, but here comes Panatom.
Looking for Twig. Thought he might go for Netrioid. Missed the Vampire Bats, and that might be it, though a good
so
slow, but that heal coming from Netrioid ended up being big.
That consecration has done so much work.
Yeah, so much healing already from that Oleron. And I just don't like that call from the Leviathans. Netrioid is dead to your first blood, right? Let's just commit to it. Let's just go in and actually make sure that we can kill him in this instance, because you're going to die. Maybe you get 2 for 1. I guess that's the concern. But as soon as clearly the alarm bells are going off. Hey, Twig's coming, Twig's coming, Twig's coming. Everyone's got to run. I feel like they could have just killed Netrioid and accepted the 1 for 1 and hope the Panatom gets there in time. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would have been a 2 for 1 that would have been built that with the dead. But Shinto is just as much of a Tiamat specialist as Paul is, so I think that I'm totally fine with him going for it.
Twig to the left. Zapman still level 4. He's got beads, and he holds
Nice
on.
pull.
Here comes World Weaver, but gets blocked off by Rongyu. Sanctified Field out, and Rongyu does big work here in keeping his hunter on the map. Now Panatom over to left.
Nice
Good body block by Genetics. Keeps the damage off of Netrioid. Second bit of damage connects, but just a bit of a good buy from Panatom there. He's got to be careful here.
Yeah.
Panatom will jump back in. Zapman and Rongyu walking forward. Zapman does have his ultimate here, so an overextension could be punished.
So does Panatom, whereas Genetics has his, but Netrioid and Captain Twig do not. Neither does Big Man Tings. So that was definitely a good attempt by Panatom to bait them back in, but that body block from Genetics just too good.
Variety double stun on his own blue buff. Looks like he's able to secure it for himself, but might end up paying for it as he'll walk around the wall here. It's actually the the Leviathan's blue buff that gets invaded there by
fight
Variety.
potential, specifically on side lane with this Neath in comparison to the Uller and the Erlang Shen instead of that Gilgamesh. That makes a pretty big difference in their fight potential.
Variety walks forward into the blue buff of the Leviathans yet again, but RDO safe enough. It looks like Variety will be just fine. This is a 3 versus 1 though. So is he just fine? That's the question. Ultimate spent. Oh, but here's Captain Twig from the left with the 9 turns blessing, a rotation in from Shinto as well. Gotta be enough damage onto Variety, but World Weaver is great. Out of Big Man Tings, Variety will not survive the descent into madness as the Leviathans notch their first of the game. Panatom slowed down on the back of this fight as the backflip is on out from BMT, but there is still damage finding its way onto the Leviathan's jungler.
Panatom just able to get out. Another good route from Big Man, forces Rongyu's beads, and the King's not done.
Oh, Genetics hits the stun as well. Captain Twig rooted in place, and Shinto is full HP. Can this Tiamat get back?
Wow.
Get involved. Yes, indeed, as the Leviathans will find another couple of kills here in this fight. And now the onslaught
What?
can continue. This fight has been flipped. Shinto's got 2 of them, and Genetics is the only one left alive.
Look at Rongu laughing in his player cam as if you can chase us out with all of this sustain. And again, just not enough anti-heal.
Burst connecting for damage, and then suddenly the camera finally pans back to where Shinto is. And he's full mana and full HP. No one has dealt with him. That entire team fight. Dash in from Hardcore will not steal away the Pyromancer. So at least the Camelot Kings able to get something going on the map here as the game has slowed down in the kill department for them. Not in the gold department, though. Still hovering right around that 2,500 gold lead for the Camelot Kings. The neutral objectives in the farm still feeling all right. So the Leviathans, they get this spark in the fight department, but the gold gap hasn't quite closed up.
And that's a really good sign for the Kings. I think at times in the past they've had these stumbles and games they're winning and then they just take their foot off the gas, but clearly not intimidated by how that last fight went.
Variety sees a storm rolling in out of the jungle, and luckily, wow, that's a decent amount of damage on the Phantom. Actually caught me by surprise, but healing from Rongu keeps him on the map. Netroid looking for the solo kill. Zapman does not have his ultimate. He does have beads, but Captain Twig makes it a 2 versus 1, and Shu in the kill column now for the Camelot Kings. Can the Kings get out, though, or are you giving up a kill on right?
Variety low on mana, knocked up by Yarkor once again by Rongu. He's on the trampoline thanks to these Guardians, but I just don't think they've got the damage in order to kill him.
They're bouncing all over the place. The last bit of mana gets used to gallop on away from this fight. Panatom does have that out of hell. 1 swoop good, 2 swoop yes, 3 goes back in, not enough damage to kill, but the auto attack gets it done, and Variety dove underneath his right side Phoenix, and the Leviathan's able to pull back another kill. And it's just a tale of 2 different sides of the map so far this game. Kills happening on right. The Camelot Kings were able to pick one up on left.
But the big difference in this game in comparison to the last is that instead of Netroid being behind Zapman having this big lead, it's the other way around now, or the starter item. So we'll see which direction he wants to go. And from now on, the Camelot Kings' whole game plan has got to be kill Shinto. And if we kill Shinto, we should be A-okay.
Well, got a World Weaver. That helps set up as long as it's not blocked by the Leviathans. BMT was very close on the net worth charts, but look at this. The Camelot Kings, they can shred this objective. You've got an Erlang Shen. You've got an AoE Coerce. You've got Netroid, who does the Pyro quickly. Frenzy used. Sanctified Field down, and Fire Giant taken by the Camelot Kings. But now it's Yarkor's time to shine. He will walk into the back line. Panatom eats the World Weaver, and the last bit of damage is there by Variety. The Camelot Kings come up huge around the FG. The World Weaver does actually connect onto the left side of this fight, and the Leviathans are scattered.
And that time it's just, hey, our whole goal is to avoid Shinto. Shinto's on the left-hand side getting red. Yeah, thanks. We're going to be here. And if you're Shinto, you have to know that your whole responsibility is to carry this game from this position, and you cannot afford to go to red anytime that there's a significant grouping on the right-hand side. Not with this composition. Not with double auto attacker, Fafnir, Shogun Skasari, Frenzy. You just can't do it.
25 seconds without Yarkor, 10 without Panatom. This is going to be a quick Phoenix, and the moment after this Phoenix falls will be pretty telling.
See ya.
And it's a turn tail on out for the Camelot Kings, and this is the stage, this is the table that's been set all game long. Quick work of. It's probably smart for the Leviathans here, aggro. You don't really stand a chance under a tier 2. You're not going to defend it anyway. If you're really making the most of every moment, you get the Pyro, but now you got to get back in time to defend the Phoenix if that's what you want to do. You don't have a say in the matter, because the Camelot Kings will transform their support, spread out that Coerce, and get the second Phoenix of the game down. If you're the Leviathans, because Fire Giant's about to be here, and you saw how quickly it died last time. I mean, if you're not there immediately, it's gone, right?
It's gone.
You have to defend.
It's already gone. It's already gone. It's not spawned for 13 seconds, but it's already dead. Because
Hardcore might be.
Yeah,
they're setting a trap. They might not even be looking for the Fire Giant. World Weaver finds its way in before Hardcore can go into the madness, and Captain Twig grabs the kill. Here comes the Coerce out from the rest of the Camelot Kings. They have baited the Leviathans forward. You thought your side of the map was safe, but it is anything but. Mid lane Phoenix, not long for this world either, if the Camelot Kings look towards it. Instead, they may end up going back and grabbing the FG.
A little surprised that this is their decision, because that mid Phoenix would have taken the blink of an eye, maybe half a blink in order to end up getting it, but they decide to go back towards Fire. This won't be contested by the Atlantis Leviathans. That's just good Smite by the Camelot Kings. You know, we could just sit around and stand by Fire and wait for it to spawn, or we can stand up in your jungle and wait for it to spawn, and if anyone makes a mistake like, oh, I don't know, Cthulhu dashing in lane, then we'll kill you for it and make sure we get the right side Phoenix as well.
At least the backs from the Leviathans are quick this time. You're going to have 4 members around the mid lane Phoenix, but that might just be 4 more kills that the Camelot Kings were able to grab here. Game number 3 looming. Camelot Kings trying to tie up this set. Panatom has to leap away. The mid lane Phoenix will head back into the ashes, wait to respawn for another 5 minutes or so. Not just yet, but haven't seen the fight form around the mid laner of the Leviathans. Haven't seen that signature Leviathans team fight come out just yet in game 2, as the Camelot Kings from very, very early on have controlled the left and spread out that control to the rest of the map. Every objective shredded quickly. One more stance here on left. Camelot Kings want to make no mistake. Left side, Phoenix will be sieged as Panatom weaves in some damage. In the mid lane is Yarkor, trying to fend off some of those fire waves.
Cool.
The Leviathans just watch it go.
Maybe the Titan then. Maybe the Titan is where we fight, because it wasn't on left Phoenix either time. It wasn't on mid Phoenix. It wasn't on right Phoenix. It wasn't on Fire Giant. So it must be on Titan that we're taking this defense. And here's the deal. What's going to happen is Genetics is going to transform.
Yep.
He's going to coerce.
Yep.
He's going to use Frenzy. Netroid's going to use Sanctified Field. And the Titan will die.
Oh, Panatom has to use Bat Out of Hell. World Weaver waiting on the other end, but he will be far enough away that no danger is there. So at least the jungler survives. And a bit of an engaged piece of utility now missing for the Camelot Kings. I'm not sure they're super worried about it, given how great this game has gone for them so far. Double taunt in the back from Captain Twig. Hardcore melted down to half HP, but it's a disengage and a massive knockup from Hardcore, but there's no re-engage from the Atlantis Leviathans. If anything, it's bought themselves some time.
And all the Kings have to do is go, yes, your ultimate that scares us. We will back it up. And we will wait, kind of like what the Leviathans were doing to the Sanctified Field.
And now, here comes the transformation from Genetics. Frenzy, Sprint, both of them still ready to go. Zapman lets the boar fly in the backline. Sanctified Field separates the Leviathans to the right side of this engagement as Netroid has found the first. Zapman, walked at by Variety, has to use his actives, and this RDO will not be denied. Zapman finds some damage, but that's just about it, and the Camelot Kings continue to play slow.
Yeah, they didn't go for the Titan at all. I mean, I don't understand why they don't just do exactly what we saw on Titan, because there's no world in which the Leviathans could have stopped them. I just don't see it. They're going to lose the right side Phoenix again. You know, that's a foregone conclusion. No way Zapman can defend this on his own. But the Leviathans are still in the game, and that's as much as they can ask for.
Buying a little bit of time. Big Man Tings has World Weaver. Captain Twig close to the 9 turns blessing. Shinto stunned in the back, but the Tiamat still undying. Beats and Aegis here for the mid laner of the Leviathans.
Right,
Yeah, goodbye. There's no team fight. And the Camelot Kings push us on to game 3. And this one is convincing.
Yeah, that was what
With the Morrigan, the earlier pick, but we unfortunately did not for the Leviathans, and then they're able to melt through one just like any objective that they're able to melt through. So I think they kind of had the advantage in the team comp in the end this game. I thought they would struggle a bit more in team fights than what they did, but man, that DPS coming out of that squad was a lot.
Man, talk about that super scrappy play right at the very beginning of the game in dual lane. What looked like was going to be a first blood up against Netroid. They were able to turn around with a rotation from Captain Twig, turn that into a 3v2, get first blood for the Kings themselves, and then they're able to translate that out, start really ballooning this league. I mean, you see it's only 3 to 4 on the kills, but the Kings were up nearly 8,000 gold at this point in the game, 20 minutes in.
That's right.
Much stronger play coming out of them here at game 2 and getting ready to hop into game 3.
Yeah, it's all credit to their draft there as well. The Fafnir is what gives them that gold lead, not just from his passive, but from the objectives as well. So intelligent pickup from them, a good adjustment from game 1. Kings have to again adjust their bans.
Yeah, as we take a look at the kills, the builds, and everything across the board, Shinto going undying, even though his team does end up losing out there. Netroid as well, 2-0-4 on this Oleron. Big Man Tings putting out the top damage in the map here, or at least on his team. Hardcore on the Cthulhu, always going to have quite a bit of damage coming out of the solo lane, no matter what. Hero putting up 17k nearly on this Neath mid, something that maybe we worried about potentially struggling just because of how susceptible to gank she is. And one of the big problems that we were worried about, you know, how easy it could have been to dive this team, that you have this Cthulhu, that you have this Camazotz, but the Kings were able to adapt to that nicely.
Yeah, they did just stand their ground.
Our grand final of the tournament, but let's jump into picks and bans here in game number 3. And maybe we see if any potential adjustments come up. We've seen a couple of Erlang Shen bans earlier throughout the day. Do you think maybe Erlang Shen might be one of those junglers kind of jump up in the rankings here of potentially being a ban, or do you think it's just Leviathans maybe grab it themselves?
Maybe they could, but it seems to the bans are just going to be generally focused on. I mean, we might see some healer bans, but just generally focused on these support picks. They want to get the Oloron out now. They didn't want to deal with it last game, even though they dealt with it well the first game, and just having the healing and being able to reset off that ultimate. But if Leviathans want to go with the similar style as what they had last game, they cannot afford to play into that Oloron, it seems. And Kings, as expected by Leviathans, are going to ban away that Aphrodite. They're not going to deal with it again. But the Hell's still on the board. I think Kings kind of bluffing and like maybe they'll ban it so we don't have to, but I suspect Kings will have to ban that Hell in the third pick because I can't imagine Shinto isn't willing to play it. And you were right about the Erling Shen.
Maybe force their hand here because Yamoja and Hell are both still up, and maybe making the Kings pick their poison. The Odin, Aphrodite, and Xing Chen. So the Kings seem to be calling the bluff of the Leviathans here.
Just going to trade the 1-for-1. Assuming Leviathans do play Hell, they, I think, should take it. I think it is the stronger pick. In my opinion, it's been strongest in this meta so far, even kind of before the meta with the Lotus Crown, before the Book of the Dead. But I would argue probably since this build has come into play, I think Hell might be a better pick than Umoja. I think just the cliff that the mid laners fall off of after that, just because she is so good with this build, is not comparable to the cliff that the support picks fall off of after Umoja. They could also be saying, you know, Genetics hasn't been able to play the Umoja much this year, just based on the fact that he's had more ping. I know it was one thing that I said earlier that Twig had said on stream that they're finally able to practice it again, and they do pick it, which is good, so that it shows already the ping difference, just like game 1 with BMT on the Ula already coming into play this weekend for the Kings.
So it will be Hell for the Leviathans' first pick, and then RTO and Yamoja, so getting both their frontliners, two very obnoxious gods to deal with out of that Guardian class specifically, one into the solo lane, one in the support role. Leviathan's going to make a quick answer back to some of this healing. It's a god that we haven't seen very much of in the last few weeks of play. Really, throughout a lot of Phase 3, we haven't really seen much of him. Cerberus kind of making his way back in here. What kind of happened with Cerberus where he just seemed to kind of just fall off a cliff himself?
He took some nerfs, but there's always the one thing that he can fall back on, and that's just his inherent anti-heal, and he needs it against this Kings comp. I think it's kind of invaluable to take, especially when you expect Kings to have more healers available to pick. The matchup into Artio is not great, it's not bad, it kind of just nothing much happens, which is sometimes just what you want into an Artio. The one thing you don't want Artio doing is just being able to run the game, and if you can hold your own as Cerberus, even if you're not winning it, that's what's important.
Well, alongside the Cerberus, we will see a Charybdis locked in. Zatman was the first one to bring the Charybdis in the Pro League. Now, granted, that was before all of her buffs came through. That game wasn't particularly too fun for Zatman. Ended up dying a couple of times, didn't get any kills. Just became a giant lightning rod more than anything for his team to soak up.
I believe he won, though, if I remember
They did
correctly.
win. He did win. I can't take anything away from that. He did win that game. But it became just essentially him saying, hey guys, I'm a Charybdis, come try and kill me. And ended up taking, what, like 10, 15 seconds to try and kill him. Eventually they do. But yeah, at the end of the day, Leviathans did win that. Now it goes back over to the Kings. They've got their front line. Do you think maybe it's an option here that they hold their kind of backline carries till the next phase?
Yeah, they could. Honestly, as well the jungle pick as well. They're looking at Hell and Charybdis. Hell with this build is going to be incredibly hard to kill. And a Ratatoska, not something I'd expect Twig to be playing, but we have seen it before. And like I said earlier in the day, Variety could be just back on that train. He played it last year when I was coaching him. He's played it over since Season 3 or whenever it was. A bit different style from then to now, but I don't know if I'm a Ratatoska that wants to dive a Charybdis and a Hell with Book of the Dead. I think Charybdis is very hard to kill just based on her kit, and the Hell, if she gets Breastplate on top of all this mana with the big shield, it's going to be incredibly hard to kill. You might have a chance in these Umoja walls if you can find her and trap her out, but I can't imagine wanting to really dive deep on this backline as a Ratatoska.
Yeah, and that's one thing to kind of bring up is those Umoja walls, trying to pick a draft around being able to get out of there. Cerberus can leap out, Charybdis can get in that whirlpool to get under there. But now what else can the Leviathans draft to try and centralize and focus around maybe getting away from this Umoja or just staying alive here? But as the second bans come through, Daji and Kepri out of the Camelot Kings, Leviathans take away Izanami to try and keep Netroid still a little further out of his comfort zone. Now with the Olorun being taken away and the Izanami still has a couple of picks he can fall back on. But it will be a respect ban of that need, taking that away from BMT.
I'd like to see Leviathans try to get some more beads punished, right? They already have the Cerber Assault that's going to force the beads out of RTO or Umoja or both. So if they can try to punish somebody for not having beads by getting something like, I don't know, some CC jungler that they can set up on and kill with their, they don't have a high damage backline, but Charybdis will end up getting that crit online and maybe even kin size. I think Zapman's kind of preferred to go the Deathbringer on top of the Wind Demon lately, but the Hell does hit hard with all the power that's going on. So now as well, you can, something that's definitely going to get beads and something you can kind of easily get beads of from as Cerberus as well. So I think, I don't expect Panatoms to be playing anything like Humbats. The Erlang is banned out. The Daji's banned out, which was smart by Kings. So he has got limited options, but I would like to see them pick something like that.
I'm talking about potential beads burn here. Ganesh, who's seen some success this week and only 1 game lost of his 5 games picked up. And that'll be the support draft now out of the Leviathans. The last option does come to Panatom. The Erlang Shen is gone. Gilgamesh is still up. We've seen that warrior still be prioritized. Even though Cyrus made a little bit of a run back here by the way of Sam for Soccer in the Dragon sets. Achilles has seen a little bit of light if you want to go with the warrior-centric. Still a few assassins out there, namely the Susano that Panatom has really loved going back towards.
A lot of knockups on that side, but I don't think Kings really can do much about that. I think both teams are just going with comfort drafts, and I'm just seeing this Hell first pick, and it's hard to put anything over that pick. They did get a nice 2-for-1 trade for the RTO Umoja into the Hell, but maybe I have Hell on such a high pedestal that maybe she's not that OP, but she looks it to me, so I'm worried for Kings in this draft.
I'm gonna hold my breath for a moment, but that moment is very brief. A Freya locked in for the first time in this tournament, the first time in quite some time.
She was good then.
But I was a wee babe way back then. You know what I mean? It's been a while. I've grown up. I've matured. So this is my coming home. This is the homecoming, right? Back to where we all started. That's right.
Unbelievable. I really did not think anyone would be picking Freya as we get close to the end of the year. But if there was a guy to do it, I would have bet the house. If you told me, hey, Freya's getting picked, who picks it? I would have bet the house it was Netrioid, because he loves this god. Like, if he could play Freya every game, I'm convinced he would. I don't know that it's really that good in this current meta. This wouldn't be the spot that I would be picking it, but the thing is, if Freya gets to late game, she still Freya's on you. You know, she still ends up just doing insane amounts of damage with the 2-1 combo. Her ultimate takes her out of combat a little bit faster. That's a change that Camelot's got as well. So that does feel good that you won't get killed by abilities as you're going up nearly as often, but still has a lot of the same weaknesses. Her wave clear stinks, her early game stinks. It takes a lot of items for her to start to feel good at all.
Maybe genetics on the Umoja helps you smooth that curve just a little bit.
Definitely doesn't hurt.
In lane here.
If you've played against it once, you know how potent it can be. Freya just does not have anything like that. She could maybe one-shot your team, but she doesn't affect the fight like an all-in can.
Panatom has eyes for first blood, but yet another set of beads used perfectly, this time by Variety, to avoid being pulled in by Panatom. So it's not for a lack of trying by the Leviathans. We've seen the Susano gather up around mid lane a couple of times. And so Panatom has not shied away from finding early aggression. Camelot Kings do not around this Gold Fury. Shinto is going to step right around this corner and check here. River's Rebuke goes up, and this is good for the Atlantis Leviathans, but it crashes together a little bit too soon. The Atlantis Leviathans will take away the Fury, and Shinto grabs first blood. It's a disaster. 8 minutes and 45 seconds in.
And Panatom finds Tings again, gets his beads once more, and heads on back to mid. That's the type of play that you got to watch out for whenever Shinto is on the other side. Genetics tried to wall him off. Netrioid even whooped him, but Shinto gets in there, gets his hands dirty, and steals away the Gold Fury, gets first blood. And look at the cascading effects now as Netrioid's in trouble.
Netrioid has ultimate and bead. Stun does not connect from Zapman, so Netrioid will walk away just fine. But without a purple buff, as Zapman was able to at least find some pressure here on left. Let's rewind the clock a bit and look back at exactly what happens as Shinto just walks in and deals the last bit of damage. And that kill is just the icing on the cake, right? You get a Gold Fury for your team anyway, and then an extra 500 gold for yourself. Has been active as far as farming goes. Haven't seen that Ratatoskr ultimate set anything up just yet.
Or used.
But Twig and his farm style has allowed him that 1-level lead.
Yeah, he's been farming well, but at some point you got to make it work on the actual fight.
There's no way this was a surprise, right? Twig just saw them walking away. Maybe Rongyu's the one who's left surprised. Phantom used on time, but just gives him a moment of escape. Captain Twig dunks in right as we're talking about it.
Genetics!
Riptide pushes him away, and the Camelot Kings walk on out.
Unbelievable play by Genetics. Twig has no beads. He's about to get picked up in a typhoon. He's just a defenseless little squirrel, and Genetics ends up saving his life with that Riptide. Absolutely insane
play. Been
play.
able to even up that gold just a little bit further. And it's right as we're talking about how we haven't seen this engage as a re-engage in the middle of a fight, almost a kill secure from Captain Twig. But it's this right here from Genetics. The inch-perfect placement.
That is crazy.
To save his team's life.
That is absolutely nuts because Twig's definitely dead there. I mean,
hard-pressed to find a kill there for Twig.
Yeah, plenty of anti-heal across the board, as you mentioned. Both Contagion and Pestilence picked up by these solo laners, but brawlers for both junglers as well. Lotus Crowns on both sides. This is the typical position now that anti-heal gets in.
Whoa, what happened to Panatom here? Escape is at least the answer. Variety stunned in place, but he's missing half of his health. Yarkor takes a bit as well. And that range damage, my goodness, the 1v1 duo. Oh, the Aegis used on time from Netroid, but Zapman's got the wave. 1v1 to the old man, and the Leviathans will pick up another. Unfortunately, Captain Twig dunks down, but into the whirlpool goes Zapman. Captain Twig doesn't have the damage, but Variety does.
Variety with that cleanup, but here comes Rongu. Does have those Dharmic Pillars, but looks like that'll be it. Well played, though, for Zap, and it took all the way until the Phase 3 playoffs, but Netroid has finally been soloed in Season 8. That was the first solo kill he's been on the receiving end of the entire season. Cooldowns on the other side, not just the ultimate from Twig, but that blink from Variety as well.
River's Rebuke goes up in the mid lane, but it looks like Shinto will be okay for the time being. Netroid, Valkyrie's discretion buys you a moment, but Zapman Aegis has had a lot of the damage. And that's actually a great Aegis from Netroid.
Yeah, and beads.
Unfortunately, doesn't mean much. Zapman, and it had to be Zapman, right? The old
100%.
veteran getting a solo kill on the young blood, and this is something
wily vet.
And that's something Netroid hasn't shied away from, taking those 1v1s all year long.
We want to fight wherever we can find it, but the Kings are playing it well to not end up giving them the bait.
I don't know, Netroid might be the one grouped up on here. There's a bit of an answer from the Camelot Kings over on the purple buff. Genetics pulls Panatom right back in. Stun from Captain Twig on the back end. Typhoon negated out by the Ratatoskr, who dashes forward, and Panatom pays for the purple buff with his life. It's a whoop up onto Rongu. Dharmic Pillars goes down, and it's actually great. Huge damage on the Captain Twig, but Twig will survive this time.
Really well played there by Rongu. Doesn't try and just run away and get his stuff body blocked. Instead, he drops the Dharmic Pillars offensively. Because at times in the late game, she just gets killed too quickly. But with the changes to the ultimate, making sure that she's untargetable as she rises, I think that might change. I think that she might be really scaling.
Uh-oh, Captain Twig looked at and nearly killed off here as Rongu drops the Dharmic Pillars. And you might feel like that's value if you're the Atlantis Leviathans. Dharmic Pillars on a bit of a lower cooldown. You got Relic Dagger there. Up if you're both of these teams. And the Gold Fury could be important in giving yourself a bit of that lead. So maybe see a clash around this Pyromancer because the Kings know what's happening.
Yeah, I like the idea to go to Pyro instead of Gold necessarily because you don't want to leave yourself open to a Fire Giant rush instead. So I like this call.
Variety, Genetics, and Twig have a chance to steal it away, but come up just short. But there is a fight afterwards. Dharmic Pillars keeps Big Man Tings in the middle just for a second. The beads are out. The leap is out as well. And the Riptide from Genetics pulls Hardcore right back. River's Rebuke is up, and Genetics walks out on the other side. As Zapman sprouts forth, wondered where he was going, but this fight a bit split up here, Aggro. Watch out for Captain Twig and his dunk. He's found the back line. But Zapman disengaging for the rest of his team. Panatom lives on, and he will survive. And Captain Twig comes up empty-handed. He'll die as well.
Shinto just crushing the Camelot Kings right
Big
now.
silence.
Genetics doing what he can, but Big Man falling too low.
Wrong, you spread that silence out perfectly. Big Man Tings comes out on the other end, but the health bar's still low here for the Leviathans. Gather around Shinto and let me sustain you up. Hardcore jumps back through. Stun out. Shinto on the killing spree, and the hell is getting the gas going.
It still has both relics, and Shinto's having the time of his life. Nice banish there by Netroid, but that feels like being happy about something that you don't have to be that happy about because the Fire Giant now is the call for the Atlantis Leviathans, and the Camelot Kings are not going to get here in time.
Every relic gets used by the Kings except for the Aegis from Netrioid in that last fight. And look whose actives are up after this fight, Aggro. Shinto's got both. Zapman, he's got both.
Yep.
That Hell makes her way through, ever in picks and pans. We've seen teams that have prioritized Hell less still get this pick banned out against them on a very consistent basis. 3 kills in Smite. Maybe not massive, but that's a solo kill. We've seen a couple so far this game, and this one is Panatom on a twig, and that's impactful. That's 50 seconds without your jungler if you're the Camelot Kings, and the Leviathans, they've got all 5.
And Shinto and Zap haven't really felt the wrath of this rat at all, but now they go, oh great, I don't have to worry about anything. Because where's the dive coming from if it isn't those two?
Zapman poked out just a bit here. Whoop under on you. He'll crash down. That's a
dash.
great riptide, but Ryu survives. And there's going to be some healing. No, he doesn't. Netrioid. He's got the last bit of damage from range. No stun from Zapman on the other end of the fight. But Hardcore has found the back of this mid lane Phoenix. Genetics desperately kiting his way backwards. And it looks like mid lane Phoenix and out is the answer from the Leviathans. Panatom all this time working down the right. And I think the riptides from Genetics this game have saved so many moments.
Yep.
And a bit of a help there in mid and getting a kill onto Wrong U. But the right side, Phoenix being looked at.
Twig's up right now and does have his ultimate,
my
but
God.
the backline's still totally fine for the Leviathans.
Oh my God, Variety just chipped away at, and that's an understatement, is the right side Phoenix now being worked on by Zapman. There's no pushback from the Camelot Kings. This one will fall as well.
Whoa!
He does it again! My man, he's off the rails. Then Panatom gets another. Captain
He's
Twig,
feeling it.
goodbye. He comes back from death and immediately finds his way back. The Atlantis Leviathans, 25 minutes into game number 3, walk into the Titan room. Variety finds a good stun here, but there is way too much. The Atlantis Leviathans rip through the Kings, and they do it quick.
1 game to go between the Atlantis Leviathans and the semifinals of the Smite.
Pull the bluff eventually. They got a good trade for it. They got the RTO and Umoja for a Hell, but it just wasn't enough. And look at this 1v1 kill. I think the Kings really need to win the early game here, and Freya's the only one that just doesn't outright win that early game. I think if she gets this solo kill, it's a whole different game, and it swings the momentum fully in their favor, and that's what they need to overtake this Hell. They can't let the Hell get to the late game, and which is tough because the Hell in the early game is a very strong god. She maybe dips down a little bit in the mid game, but you really need to win the early game against her to be able to make sure that she doesn't get to the late game. Especially with the team comp like Kings had, they just basically needed to get rolling sooner than they did, and I think that 1v1 kill was pretty crucial in that.
Yeah, I think you may have also, painted a really perfect picture here of, they called the bluff on the Hell pick. They said, okay, you're going to get one, we're going to get the other. But I think after this game, and I think we get some cooldown, we get a Lotus Crown, it was an E-Staff and a Soul Reaver here to kind of round out the build. So Shinto didn't care about this Book of the Dead meta that's popped up from these mages. He just went back to what has worked for him in the past, and maybe now, with the Kings going first pick, maybe they try and leave it open, see if the Leviathans call that bluff. But I don't know if the Leviathans are going to let that one go.
I think so. They were pretty split comp in the end, and they just needed to get an early game rolling much more than they did, which I think is what their goal should be this game. I think unless they just want to match the scaling that Leviathans are doing against them, otherwise I think they should just go back to what they were doing against Scarabs, which is just play the early game. They showed that they could do well against Scarabs. Obviously, Leviathans are a completely different beast than what Scarabs are. No shade against Scarabs. It's just, there's one team in the semifinals and one isn't. But King's still not letting the Aphrodite go. The Odin Ben is going to be 100%. I don't think Leviathans... There it is. I don't think the Leviathans are going to let the Hell through, and they did not.
Yeah, no way the Leviathans are going to let it pick that. They were just able to get a dominant performance on and let that one through over towards the Camelot Kings. So that one does get banned away in the second pick here by the Leviathans. With the Camelot Kings up at first pick, they got a little bit of flexibility on what they can do with their draft, leave a couple of things open to maybe try and grab for themselves. But RTO, so maybe surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, finally finds her way in the ban column here in game number 4. It's the Leviathans who are the ones that take her off the table.
I was going to say I thought she was going to be open soon. I was going to say it's surprising that they banned the Oloran away when that was one of the better picks they had in the RTO. So I guess take the Oloran away. You can no longer deal with the RTO either, so take that away, and you just leave Kings with a Olong Shen first pick. I don't think Twig's too sad about that. It's not maybe his favorite pick. I think that might be like Humbats or something, but it's definitely something something he's more comfortable on, in my opinion, than what would be like a Ratatoska, for example.
Yeah, it's something that he had success on yesterday. It was one of the gods that they won in game number 5 against the Scarabs. It's a god that, I mean, we saw a ban come through it earlier on just in the last game alone. And now with the Kings' backs against the wall, they need to get this win to push it over towards game 5. Otherwise, Leviathans can take the set here, move on to the finals, move on to the Smite World Championships. For the Leviathans to respond to this Erlang Shen, they go with Geb to give them a little bit of safety, and then a Charybdis for a little bit of that lane clear. So Zapman going back to so it seems to be the trend here with the Leviathans. Zapman plays good on a god one game. He's going to run it back in the second game.
That's true, and we're seeing both teams kind of identify their style early in the draft, and I hope they both stick with it. We've got the Geb and the Charybdis, which is playing not necessarily to die in the early game, just play to scale into the mid-late game. And we've got the Erlang Shen picked over the Geb, just to solidify the fact that they want to play the early game. They want to get the ganks going. They want to get a lead going early, which is what they had in, I believe it was the game 2 with the Fafnir. So they might go towards something like that again. But now there's a chance for it to be banned away. So a lot more mid-game team fight coming in from the Nike Tiamat now. I imagine Leviathans will answer this Nike with something like a Mulan maybe. And they have not. They've gone for the Morrigan transform and take the Nike transform for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, what's better than having a Nike on your team? Well, actually still having the actual Nike,
That's
but
right.
You can get the next best thing with the Morrigan and grabbing one of your own. Geb, Charybdis, Morrigan line out the draft for the Leviathans in the first half. Kings get the Erlang Shen Nike Tiamat, so putting big man Tings back on a traditional mage, one that he's been able to hard carry games with, multiple multi-kills, a couple of quadras throughout this god's lifetime specifically, just here in Season 8 of the SPL. And with this Morrigan locked in, the Kings are not going to let any shenanigans go through.
right.
They're going to take that Cthulhu off the table right away.
Can't deal with 2 of them at once, and I don't think they could deal with 2 Camazots at once either, so that would be the next ban I like to see. I don't want to see a Geb shield on 2 different or 2 separate Camazots at any risk of like dying to a Tiamat or anything like that. They haven't got their other backliner yet, so they may not want to pick their jungle 4th here. They might want to wait and see if they can get a counter pick for themselves.
Geb's going to give them a lot of safety, a very passive dual lane, as you mentioned earlier. Geb, not really known for clear. Charybdis, kind of hit or miss on the clear. She can get some nice full clear if you let her stand all the way up to the minions. Not often that you would want them to do so. But Kings have one more ban to tag along with the Sylvanas Khepri and Cthulhu. So 4 Guardians, but 2 of them on one side of the playing field, 1 on the complete other end here. Camelot Kings have 1 more ban to go before the Leviathans get their option to get the counter pick right after the bans. You're kind of harping towards the Camazots, one of those being ones just for the heavy dive that it provides.
If not Camazots, then another early game jungler like we see Soket, just so they have more pressure and more rotation ability out of that 3v3 or 2v2 in the mid lane with the Tiamat Erlang. If they get some space in front of them, they can find people pretty easily, whereas if they're against the Morrigan and like say, I guess something like a Soket, they can easily pick them in the jungle while they rotate. It's going to be really hard to impact the map and impact the side lanes, but because you ban away the Soket, you have to play into a double Camazots. That's what they knew it was coming, and they were talking about it for quite a while, you could tell. So I guess they think they can deal with it.
Now, something that was discussed earlier on the day, now you have this Morrigan. We talked about the Nike transformation. You can have more of a defensive option, but now you have that offensive power with the Camazots. Now you can have 2 of those, plus a Geb and a Charybdis. Talk about a lot of safety that can come from just this draft alone. The Camelot Kings are looking back over towards this Fafnir, is able to get them a lot of objective burn, a lot of objective clear in earlier games. Do you like the Fafnir coming out here in game number 4?
Look, if they were going to go down that route, then I would have rather them ban 2 junglers than ban the Cthulhu, right? We saw them deal with at least one of the Cthulhus without the Morrigan in that game because they had the Fafnir and that DPS in front of them. Maybe they struggle more this game, and that's why they ban the Camazots, because they have the Tiamat, which doesn't have as much frontline damage as, say, like a Hunter or something. But still, they have a lot of objective damage with the Erlang. Heim isn't doing a whole lot of objective damage, just your typical Hunter, but no steroid or anything like that unless the Fafnir's around.
Yeah, no stem, but a lot of safety to say the least. And a last pick, Achilles. A god that's been popping in and out. We know the Dragons really like this god, throwing him over into the solo lane. It seems that will probably be the call here.
And they have not drafted very good compositions in order to take down the front line of the Atlantis Leviathans. And I think that they're more equipped to do it this game than they were in games 1 or 3. So they've got that going for them, which is nice. But at the end of the day, I feel like the Leviathans, I just agree with Ro, like they just got so many good picks. I mean, if Camazotz isn't up against these Book of the Dead mages, he still dominates in the majority of 1v1s. We've seen Achilles look like the best solo laner in the game.
Yeah, there you go.
earlier this today. That was today, by the way. It's just a lot of really strong stuff for the Leviathans.
Netroid's going to get some good damage here on the Zap Man. Then the question becomes, because the Camelot Kings, not as if they have a bad draft, but you're going back to the Fafnir, you've got Captain Twig with the Mannequin Scepter, you have the ability to maybe shred some of these objectives. You're missing the Ola run that you had in that objective shred game where the Camelot Kings were able to win. Then maybe is the game plan, can we avoid fighting against the Leviathans?
Really good.
Is it just like the double untargetable and chase down in the fights?
Right, you just want the ability, you want easy to land abilities that are gonna, deal
I want
like,
those. Yep.
You want, because a lot of times on the Morrigan, you need the last like 30% or 40%, and both Kama and Robin can do those either with ult or with buttons.
Whoa, Blinks exchange, and they're both on a Captain Twig, and the 9 turns Blessing hits its mark on 1. Pin is there on the Panatom as well. Big Man Tings uses the beads as he rotates in from the mid lane, swoops on through, but a jump on out from BNT. Shinto transforms into the Nike, jumps in, finds Captain Twig. The knockup is there on the back end, and the Leviathans have grabbed first blood, and it's Captain Twig who goes down. And second blood on the other end of the Cataclysm is there.
Big Man Tings just has nowhere to go. The CC chain is potent from the Atlantis Leviathans, and they chase him down with ease through the mid lane. Just a definite miscommunication on how that fight was supposed to go for the Camelot Kings, because it looked like it was going to be going the way of the Kings, but Big Man Tink walks around the right side. Leviathans are focused on the left. It's a blink in, and it was actually a bit of a misplay, a pretty big one by Panatom. He missed his Vampire Bats on Captain Twig off the knockup.
You sort of know what to expect when it's that standard Chronos Soul Gem, Soul Reaver build.
Right.
Do you need a little bit more time now to dial up if you're Big Man Tings?
Yes, especially if you're going Breastplate. Now, I think if you go Book of Thoth, Book of the Dead, Soul Reaver, I think that build comes online earlier, but the other way does not.
I don't think Zapman has his escape off of cooldown. One more auto, and Metroid's got it and turns it around. Reparations for game number 3. Variety, though, maybe a bit caught out. Rongyu uses the blink, but so does Captain Twig. The Leviathan's fishing for some kills on right. Looks like a blue buff is all they'll reel in.
Yeah, hey, that's fine. You still get the blue buff. You still get the blink away.
We're even, huh?
Yeah, very even. And that's a really smart play from the Camelot Kings. As the game goes later, these buff invades start to become more and more worth it. And somehow, some way, Variety actually has a level lead over here. He's never going to win the fight, but at least he's in the lead.
Genetics transforms to the first objective shred of the game, and it is slower than the last time we saw it, and this gives the Leviathans a chance to answer. But that chance is fleeting. 3-man Cataclysm from Rongyu as the rest of the Leviathans funnel in around the FG pit. And the Camelot Kings are grouped up, and Shinto thanks them for it. Pyro goes to the Kings with the kill over the Leviathans.
Netrioid comes all the way over, and he's going to be able to eat him up right now. Huge damage, and they're going to grab 2.
Camelot Kings, they come alive here on the back end of the Pyromancer. You lose 1, but you'll take 2 in trade. Zapman stayed on the left this entire time. Should be a tier 1 tower for the Atlantis Leviathans. That'll give them just a bit of gold here. And the Camelot Kings, that's enough. And as even of a game as we've had. Gold lead 17 minutes in, which sounds minuscule, but when you're looking at these two teams, the gold leads have been right around this part, or right around this mark at this point throughout some of the games we've seen so far here in this set. Genetics holds on to his ultimate, about a minute left on that frenzy. So maybe you start to consider setting up for something like the Pyromancer here in a little bit. Nice hammer connects onto Zapman, but of course the shielding from Rongyu prevents any further damage from coming in. Slow rotation over here to the left side of the map, whereas Rongyu is here right now. Captain Twig taunts on through. Zapman backs away, and he's taking a lot of damage. He's in the ultimate here as well. No stun connects, but here come the Kings.
And here comes Variety as well, whereas Yarkor is significantly behind on this rotation. This tier 2 is dropping fast.
Behind in speed, but also behind in positioning. Watch out for the Achilles around the backside of this fight. 4-man knockup from Rongyu. Shinto melting away, transforms into the Nike. That'll buy himself some time. Yarkor found his way around the back, but it's a crystal on out from Netroid. The Heimdall will live on. Thorns used from Variety, and it looks like everyone lives on. But the Camelot Kings get 2 towers.
And they put good pressure on the Netrioid, but his relic usage was solid there, ends up getting through his crystal.
Able to be referenced back to. You're also not casting at that time. I don't know. We're getting into interesting territory there. I don't want to tempt the fates of the casting gods. The Pyromancer burned away by the Camelot Kings. Variety just playing separator here. Do the Camelot Kings feel comfortable enough with now some of the power spikes they've got to engage WrongU? Two-man Cataclysm this time. As Yarkor ticked on down by the Camelot Kings around the right side. Netrioid, he can't get into his crystal, and Yarkor will kill him off. Now the Leviathans have a massive advantage on the back end of this fight. Genetics knocked up and knocked away, and look at Zapman on the re-engage. Somehow, the rest of the Kings survive, but it might be an FG pull for the Leviathans.
Shinto, baby. Shinto makes it happen. A beautiful double stun onto a priority target in Netrioid, and Netrioid just too far forward and doesn't have that Aegis available whenever he falls. He dies with it on 3 seconds. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to show himself on that minion wave. Doesn't want to give the Camelot Kings the excuse.
Genetics might have the idea, though. He's got Transformation, he's got Frenzy, he's got Shogun's Kusari, all of it ready to go. At the drop of a hat, the Camelot Kings can burn this objective, and they can do it quickly. That said, remember, we talked about objective secure, how there's nothing guaranteed in this game. If the Leviathans are close by, you're flipping a coin and hoping that you come out on top when the Fire Giant gets real low. So the Camelot Kings would love, and the Leviathans would love to win a fight beforehand and make it just a little bit more guaranteed. But now that you're starting to roll into the 27-minute territory, we've seen games where you fight around here, and we don't care about the Fire Giant. You lose a fight handily enough from this point on. It's the difference between Game 5, where the Leviathans heading to the semifinals of Worlds. And here's your jump in. Variety has found Phantom, and so is a whole lot of damage. And Bat Out of Hell is down. And the Camelot Kings, they realize it.
Instantly to it, but Netrioid is tanking this Fire Giant. He's got to reset it or else he'll not do enough damage.
Jump in from Variety. He's found Zapman in the back, but Zapman able to hold on to both of the actives. Yarkor walks for Genetics breathing fire out, and here's the Frenzy, not on the objective, but on the team fight. Shinto's transformed, and he is swooping through into the backline. Captain Twig is left, but instead, the Camelot Kings have found 2 kills, and now individually picked off for the Atlantis Leviathans, Panatom and Shinto, the last 2 on the map, but the end is not the call. Instead, it's back to the fire.
The Camelot Kings just picked apart the Atlantis Leviathans. That poke from Big Man Tings and from the Warrior's Axe upgrade there for Variety proves to be a little bit too much. And the Leviathans just got really lost on how they wanted to start standing around trying to get his Sundering Axe procs that he just ended up taking too much. And the Camelot Kings were able to engage pretty easily.
Smelling a lot like Game 5 around here, but we're talking.
No, that's me. Sorry, Dave.
Was that lunch? No,
yeah,
got it. It's lunch. Yeah, my mistake. It's Moe's that we're hanging out with in the caster room right now.
They do have momentum.
They do have Mo, our friend Momentum. Right. We're talking about Caster's Curse, though, and I hope I didn't just do it to the Camelot Kings, because a Game 5 between these 2 teams would be a hell of a lot of fun if the Camelot Kings were able to close this one out. They have got plenty of time on this Fire Giant buff. 2.5 minutes to work towards. All 3 Phoenixes are open. You're waiting on a couple of actives. You're waiting on the beads for Twig and the Aegis for Big Man Tings. Variety caught out just a bit, but he will leap away just fine. And you're forcing this ping-ponging from the Leviathans to decide which Phoenix to defend.
I mean, it's not going to be easy either way, because you have lots of Tiamat minions on this left-hand side. The all-in potential from Captain Twig, now that he has that Mannequin's Mace upgrade, is tough. And again, Yarkor is just getting poked every single time by Big Man.
Big Man Tings jumps on out. He has now completed his build. Obsidian Shard is there. Bulwark of Hope down from Yarkor. So you receive some poke. That extra bit of shielding is missing, and 45 seconds is a decent cooldown when you're talking about stuff like this, or stuff I thought would be like this, and that's in and out empty-handed.
Netrioid had to use the ultimate, but that's a well-worth trade, because the front line now for the Camelot Kings knows they're safe.
That's a lot of the engage. That's now missing for the Atlantis Leviathans. The Camelot Kings able to back away from the left side Phoenix, but they've gotten plenty of damage put into it. The Atlantis Leviathans, they would love to turn this around, stamp their ticket to the semifinals of the Smite World Championships, but the Camelot Kings, the kings of lengthy sets this weekend, eyeing a Game 5. Crossing your T's, dotting your I's, and you're starting it with the left side Phoenix.
There was not a whole lot of pushback there for the Leviathans, was there? I mean, they tried once for WrongU to find a Blink Cataclysm onto Netrioid, but he was able to use his ultimate quickly in order to get out. WrongU's ultimate is coming back up eventually, but that's eventually. We're still a ways away from that being ready.
Same with Netrioid, that being said. And so if some of that CC is able to find its way onto the Camelot Kings Hunter, he's going to have to use the relics to get it done there. Now you find the auto attacks onto the mid lane Phoenix. Panatom chunked down. Nice knock-up from Wrong You. And it's a transformation from Genetics. Here we go as the Camelot Kings walks in. Coerce spreads its way out onto the Kings, but Frenzy is held onto. Captain Twig able to scurry his way away. And you're thinking we're fighting. Leviathans had something else in mind. They watched their Phoenix go down.
Get in there. You know,
because you're gonna lose if you don't do anything.
Exactly.
You might as well lose team fighting, right?
Exactly.
You don't want to go down. Yeah, well, I was gonna say without swinging the bat, but I appreciate you filling in the blank for me there, Aggro. Leviathans, you got to swing. You're down 0-2 in the count, and you don't want to go down looking as the Camelot Kings eye their way towards the enhanced fire giant. Maybe that is where you make your stand if you are the Leviathans, because I'm hard-pressed to believe you're winning a fight up against the Kings fully enhanced up. Yarkor wants to go. The rest of the Leviathans didn't quite get the memo. He's at least able to back out as the rest of the Leviathans regroup. There are fire minions on the Titan. And so the Camelot Kings can delay out this fight. Variety drops a Sentinel of Zeus, but that shielding is gone. Captain Twig alone in the back, and he will find a knock-up on his way out of the right side of this fight. Some pushback from the Leviathans, but that was big burst damage from BMT.
And you can feel your core's frustration. I mean, he blinks in, and there is no one within 3 blinks of him on his team. Like, no shot anyone can get there.
Don't tell me the minions are just going to win this game, right?
I hope not, but
all
they
the backs
might.
are stopped. Shinto goes back to base to deal with the Titan, and the Camelot Kings now have a 5v4 on the right side of the map. So the Titan will live on, but now the Camelot Kings have free reign of the right side of this map. You favor them in a 5v5, you gotta favor them in a 5v4, and here comes the collapse. The Camelot Kings jump in, and they are decimating the Atlantis Leviathans. A game number 5 awaits, and to a game number 5 we will go.
No shot for the Atlantis Leviathans to come back in this one. Variety goes in and puts the finishing touches on Zapman with that barrier formation, and it's all over but the crying here in game number 4. Atlantis Leviathans got to change something going into the next one.
They got to change something. The Titan way too low. There will be no pushback, and the Camelot Kings in back-to-back days will take us to a game number 5. This one,
they couldn't die, and then sooner rather than later, Genetics helps, like I'm seeing now. Netroid hit literally everything and get a kill, even with Zapman juking with that movement speed increase. And then he rotates over to this right mid-camp fight, which in my opinion was a huge momentum play that it gave them back the game, because they did have a rough start in the mid lane against that Morrigan and Camazots, but it just turns into Netroid just absolutely popping off, and he made it so difficult for Shinto to play this game with it just being so hard to find an engage. You know, we're talking about the front line trying to find an engage, but Shinto can't either, and that's really, really critical for Shinto to be able to find that one stun on either BMT or Netroid. And the one time they did find that, they won the team fight really hard.
It's all out there on the battleground where the Kings were able to come up victorious here in game number 4. That means we go to the coveted game 5 a second time now with the Camelot Kings in 2 days. Netroid, though, not topping the damage chart. I think it's right to really highlight his play throughout the game. You know, one of the things that, you know, now comes down to the picks and bans of game number 5. We briefly discussed kind of on our walk back here that you don't really want to expend a ban towards the Fafnir here up against the Camelot Kings if it's just to kind of stop that. At the same time, is that maybe something Leviathans kind of maybe thinking that they need to ban?
Maybe. I mean, it's been the one consistent thing that Kings have had in these 2 wins. I don't necessarily think it was a huge part of the last game, even though it did help them basically make these objective calls. And by the way, that's what I think Genetics is kind of best at, is making these quick map plays, these quick objective calls when he can do something and getting his team to follow him very quickly. You know, as soon as you see a Fafnir ulting and calling to do an objective, you're going to do it because he's popping a Frenzy, he's popping the 2, and you've got the DPS when you need it. But like I said, they don't have really the space in their bans to ban a Fafnir. I don't think it's the problem, but it does suit King's playstyle perfectly.
Well, as the first bans are concerned, the Kings will keep consistent in taking these healers out of Shinto's hands. It's going to be Aphrodite and Hell, banned away by the Camelot Kings. Olarun, still going to be a problem that the Leviathans don't want to deal with. They don't want to play it themselves, so they'll take it, the Geb, and once again, the Erlong Shen off the table. Not wanting Captain Twig to go back to something else that was keeping fairly consistent here for the Camelot Kings.
That's right. I guess they just have to go for the RTO. The Olarun's not on the table, so you don't have to worry about playing RTO into Olarun, something that's really frustrating. Yeah, there it is. Simple as that. And now they just get to see what Kings pick and respond to that.
The Kings, for their final ban, it was Umoja, making sure to, again, keep Wrong You off the signature pick, making sure to just keep Umoja out of the game as a whole, because nobody wants to really deal with all the shields, the healing, the CC, and lockdown this god provides. I mean, Genetics performed almost as perfect as you could want on a Wrong You in previous matchups, even though it didn't end up coming up with a win there. Still some fantastic play out of him. So it will be the first pick Heimdall out of the Kings. I think it's telling we go from giving a Netroid a 5th pick to getting a 1st pick.
Yeah, we saw Zapman top 3 the Artemis after he had a great game 1, and now we see Netroid have a great game 4 and instantly take the Heimdall before anybody else can take it away from him. And they're going for just the same backline. I guess that's what they thought was the trick to that comp. It does match the pacing of what this set has been so far. There hasn't really been these crazy blowouts in the early game. They're all scaling decently well into the mid game, but not without fighting. So both of these gods can brawl a decent amount. They're not the best, they're not the worst, but they both scale very well as well.
And then extra little nugget of sustain on that side. Leviathans grab Artios, Sylvanas, and now a Hachiman. So we went from Hunters kind of get mid to late priority as far as the picks and band order goes, but now both of our Hunters here in game number 5 want to grab that before that top 3 and get something right and ready to go. Hachiman for the Leviathans, Heimdall for the Kings, and it was already tough for them to get to this Heimdall, tough for them to get to this Tiamat. So the Kings going back to it, and now they have the world is their oyster here as far as frontline is concerned. You imagine the Leviathans for their bans, if something doesn't get picked up here, that's where a lot of their focus is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like both teams are just picking exactly what they want. They want to play their own style, what they're best at, back to the comfort picks, and this is one for Genetics, that's for sure. I think it will struggle a little bit into the Sylvanas, but you can pick him as well in the early game. They do have the pick potential with Tiamat and, you know, some kind of setup jungler that Captain Twig could bring, but the protections and the healing from the RTO and Sylvanas are going to be a lot to deal with. We could have the potential for a Divine out of Tiamat, but I imagine he's just going to the same combination build that he had last game.
Man, this is a kind of a pullback here for the Camelot Kings, a Morgan Le Fay ban.
Yeah.
A god that we haven't seen any of this weekend. We only saw once, maybe twice during the group stages, and I believe Paul was one of the only players who was still popping out at that time. But doing a real big throwback here to try and get something away from Shinto.
I think they're not even taking it away from him. Well, technically they are, but I think they're trying to push him towards the Morrigan. They have the Khepri into the Morrigan, which is great into any single target that Morrigan is, and the Heimdall stealth reveal against Morrigan as well. So if you kind of leave Morrigan as his best pick and you already want to play against that, you just beat it as well, I guess that's their goal.
One more ban to go for both teams. It's Odin on the side of the Leviathans that actually sneakily kind of made it through. I can't believe that Odin made it all the way to the second round of bans, considering he's been a top ban throughout the entirety of these sets. Serket will be the final one out of the Camelot Kings, so taking some of the safety in the jungle away, taking away some of that mobility. Leviathans have one more answer as far as the bans are concerned here. And you got Artio, you got Sylvanas, and Hachiman. If you're the Camelot Kings, looking at the 3 that they've drafted, what other 2 picks you may be wanting to try and take those 3 on?
I'm not sure, but I see them take the Nike away, and that's because they're trying to force variety onto something that an RTO could beat, right? Where a Nike and an RTO lane, not much is happening, right? But if they don't want to play against an Achilles, they take the RTO early. That forces them, you know, Achilles would be a bad matchup into an RTO, but then take away the Nike, force them to play the Achilles, and get that winning matchup on that side of the map.
So they're aiming for a winning matchup on the right-hand side with that RTO potentially. Kings now with this Nike band away. They've got one more pick before it hands back over towards the Leviathans to draft themselves. They've got their support. They've got their 2 backline carries, and they need their jungler and their solo. But it's going to be Sobek that pops out here for the Kings.
Yeah, the old tried and true, always good into Sylvanas. Nothing much is going to happen against RTO. You could give up too much pressure if you pick something that's as low clear as Sobek. So if Leviathans, for example, pick something that's a very high pressure jungler that can fight a lot, they may be able to get into these blue buffs. But I don't think Variety's really cared so far. Any blue buff he's lost, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't phase him. He just kind of keeps on clearing the wave, hardly even contests it if he doesn't need to.
You were kind of hinting earlier about, you know, banning this Morgan Le Fay, kind of forcing him into this Morrigan pick here on the side of the Leviathans. Do you think that this Sobek is still kind of doing that same story of trying to really force him to pick that Morrigan?
A little bit. It definitely makes it so there isn't a great Morrigan transformation, because so far from what I see, there really isn't any. You know, you're not going to transform into a Sobek either, whereas if Nike was open, that would make the Morrigan a little bit better.
2 more picks here for Leviathans. They need their mid. They need their jungle. It was Morgan Camazot's last time around. They had a couple of other gods surrounding them in that instance. But 2 more pivotal picks. Remember, winner of this game punches their ticket to the finals of this weekend. That'll happen tomorrow at 11 a.m. But also to the Smite World Championships and a spot in the semifinals where they get to bypass everything that happens in December. They get to watch as the meta develops. They get to start seeing everything that goes around. And the Atlantis Leviathans start their final 2 with a Kali jungle.
They can get that pressure like I was talking about into the Sobek, and now they've got a combo in the mid lane as well. They've got a lot of sustain, not necessarily great into Sobek, but I guess it's a play they just, again, they don't want to go towards that Morrigan because of the setup that, how Kings have set them up for it. So it basically, you know, banning the Morgan and picking what they did also essentially bans Morrigan. And I was expecting either a Humbats or a Gilgamesh here, and we've got the Humbats.
Draft the way that wants to play. Panatom hyper carry, Shinto, searing pain on the back end of that setup. Is it there for the Leviathans in this game?
You know, I think it is because, you know, look at I just said it at the end of Game 4. They've won the healing drafts. They have the 2 primary healers banned away, so they pick some healing. They pick Sylvanas, they pick Ra. And, you know, it brings that more death ball style composition that I think they're the best at. I think that Ra into Khepri is actually a pretty good matchup for Ra because all you have to do is hold your snipe and wait until the res starts coming through, and as they're traveling, you just snipe the Khepri, and as long as you time it right, you'll insta-kill them as soon as they land, and it's really not the most difficult timing. So I think that if Shinto's on point, and that's the thing about Ra, is that he is a rhythm character. Like, you need to be working on this god. Ra is not one of those gods that you can just pull out and absolutely dominate with after not practicing him for a while.
Last game, looks like that's still the mindset here on the Tiamat. Though if I'm remembering correctly, it was Conduit Gym instead of the Sands of Time. Had to get a little CDR later on in the build. Could be totally misremembering that. But at any rate, the core is that it's Book of the Dead. Variety stunned.
Oh no, it's Med!
Base, but Captain Twig rotates over. Med providing the healing for Variety. And has the first blood been flipped around? Pluck, maybe just a couple seconds off of cooldown here. But that's something the Leviathans would like to play around. You can still turn it around for our first blood. Double stun from Yarkor, and Captain Twig takes some big damage here. Pluck back onto Panatom, who's sent right back into the awaiting arms of Captain Twig. Yarkor has near no mana. And somehow we'll walk out of this one without a first blood.
Man, that med value was just, it was just perfect. He's 1 HP, and remember that it's all missing HP that you get back, basically. A little bit of base, but mostly missing HP. You have the capability to group around it, and, you know, don't forget that Ra's great around objectives, not just because of the secure, but because Solar Blessing gives you and your team power. So everyone's hitting it a lot harder. I think that's strong.
Great Scorpion, and we scrapping over this. This early into Game 5, secured by the Camelot Kings, so we go 1 for 1. Leviathans get the one on right, and the Camelot Kings will grab the one over here on the left side of the map. Now, we have not seen these teams shy away from red buff invade. Searing pain on the back end. Captain Twig lives on, and there's the Scarab's blessing on him as well. Captain Twig will make his way back to base, but now Panatom, he's got to use the destruction just to stay alive. Shinto doesn't have Searing Pain. Variety rotates over from Solo, and the Pluck splits the uprights right down Main Street, and the Camelot Kings grab first blood.
Zap and Netrioid meeting in the left side. Harpies trying to take a fight. Knock up is perfect. Netrioid toast!
And that is big damage from the Leviathans to answer back on the first blood in the mid lane, but we've got more. Rongyu is knocked up, plucked back Variety, making a big rotation out of Solo. You need a little bit more damage, and Captain Twig is into supply.
Zap went in with that EI Jutsu, but looks like he won't get punished in Variety. I mean, you want to talk about value out of an early rotation. Gets 2 kills for his team based on these plucks, and you just can't afford to keep taking that fight. Give it some credence. You get, not only do you get power in Solar Blessing, but you also get physical protection. And when you've got physical protection, you add some physical protection. And Yo Dog, I heard you wanted some physical protection.
That's right.
From Lotus Crown stats and the passive. It does make you very hard to kill, but this is not a great dive composition coming out.
Good pull in onto Genetics, and all of the CC is there. The Scarab's Blessing rather comes out. Searing Pain, we'll ignore that one because the kill is there. The Atlantis Leviathans pull in Genetics, force out the ultimate and the sprint, and the Gold Fury is here on the other end. You don't have that secure from the Searing Pain. Netrioid has a chance to take this one away, but it's going to be a jump in for Panatom. Captain Twig has gotten a kill on right onto Yarkor, but the Gold Fury gets reset. Netrioid crystals his way out. Zapman rotates in, and the Leviathans, they'll grab the Gold Fury. They do suffer a casualty on right.
Yeah, they make it look easy, like me dunking a basketball looks easy. It doesn't.
Not, right.
Well, that one doesn't happen, so, you know, I guess it's not a great comparison. But hey, they got it at the end of the day, I suppose, and they make it work, but boy, did it make me nervous.
Whoa, Zapman, we're going in. We're tower diving, baby. Tier 1, 11 minutes in. Netrioid does not have beads, does not have ultimate, but Wrong You wanted nothing else. Difficult to close that
Camelot
gap.
Kings, because off-screen, Captain Twig found Yarkor, who normally is so willing to take these early engagements, especially on the RDO, but got out-rotated heavily by Variety, and Captain Twig just came on over and beat him down off the proxy. Didn't even use the Fear No Evil. That's a little bit of disrespect.
And knock this one down. Rotation in from Captain Twig towards left. Twig does not have ultimate. Zapman has beads and ultimate himself. Hard pressed to see a world where you get that kill.
Yeah, I don't think so. But hey, Captain Twig has no threat on him, but still forced the ultimate out from Zap. So that's good. And it relieved pressure on Netrioid.
Man, there's a lot of pressure here in this game. This time back over on solo. Variety takes the ultimate from Wrong You. And the Med doing its work yet again here, but now it's a Pluck back onto Yarkor. Big Man Tings is rotating back in from base. Pluck into Pluck. Forces the beads out from Yarkor and the dash away.
But Captain Twig's on the way back. No blink, has the ultimate. Leviathans will be out of range, but you're right, Dave. I mean, just such a heavy investment onto this Sobek.
He'll get percent pen later, but this build screams to me, I don't want to die to dive, but you should. To what dive? The solo Hunbats? I mean, he just can't kill you it really at any point.
See if Ethereal Staff finds its value. A couple plucks might find their way in. Netrioid locked into his crystal. He's thanking the heavens. He's able to make his way out of that one. Full on the HP bars for the Atlantis Leviathans. Needless to say, our core blinks in, but he's a solo agent this time. Captain Twig jumps on out, and he's just fine. Tier 1 tower on left ends up going down, and it looks like enough space has been bought. Camelot Kings will let this Primal Fury go quietly.
Yeah, no way that they step up to contest this, but have to make sure they don't just go straight to fire.
Although, Variety
no
is
secure.
close. We're hesitating now. You might have to spend Shearing Pain. Searing Pain, if you're Shinto, you wouldn't love it, but the Camelot Kings able to get it without using their mid lane secure. Variety makes you think twice, but the Leviathans will get it nonetheless.
So now you've actually got some threat, not on the Sobek, but onto the rest of the cast.
Wrong You on one side of the rock here. No good on the pull. Would have been scary for Captain Twig. Has beads and Fear No Evil. But still would have been a lot of damage following its way in there on the back end of that pull. This is a threat around the Fire Giant, despite there being no Pyromancer, no Fury up. And so really the only neutral objective you can dance around is the Fire Giant. You've got enough shred maybe at this point in the game. You got Chin Size on your Kali. The Panatom will be able to do some good damage to it. Zapman far along in his build as well. He was making the Camelot Kings guess where you're at. Leviathans do a lot of damage to this mid lane tier 1 tower. A root finds its way in onto Wrong You, and if I'm seeing things correctly, that was an ult out of Netrioid.
It was.
That just sent him a bit over to the right, but there's no real threat on him. There is threat. However, onto Variety, the chain CC is in, and the Scarab's Blessing. Helpful, but not needed.
Yeah, hey, he might have needed it overall, because Shinto had his finger on the trigger, I'm sure, on that Searing Pain, but Variety ends up surviving. Ends up holding on to his meditation as well, so that is huge for him to hold on to the relics and still survive. It will cost them the tier 1 at the end of the day, but that was 2 ultimates used by the Camelot King. Hastened scares you that much. He's still scary because he's chin-sized Kali, but still.
Yep. It's another Oni Fury pull. This one's quick. Searing Pain does get used. Just for a little bit of damage this time, not so much the secure. Camelot King's a bit slow on the response to the objective itself, but not so much the fight afterwards. You see kind of the surge forward, all 5 members of the Camelot Kings here on right. Pluck from Variety was threatening there.
That's
a pull onto Captain Twig. There's no Searing Pain here to follow up with all of that damage, but Captain Twig has to use the Fear No Evil. Panatom around on the right, dealing some tick damage to Captain Twig, who will leap away from the rest of this fight. The Camelot Kings want nothing to do with this, and the Leviathans want everything.
Straight to fire. Straight to fire. This is a perfect case scenario because your Oni waves are starting to push right now. So even if you just waste their time by bringing them to this objective, you could end up pulling them away from some of these minion waves.
Shinto's got his ultimate. Going around this Fire Giant, the Leviathans have pulled it and they've got it down to half HP. A little bit of damage finds its way onto the front line. Pyromancer now the objective that's pulled, and the Atlantis Leviathans are able to secure it. Variety dashes on away from Yarkor, but how many times have we seen this? How many times have we seen the RDO galloping forward? Searing Pain connects for a little bit of damage onto the Camelot Kings, but the Leviathans, they're low as well. They'll have to back away.
And that was a battle heal expended by Shinto, so he's not going to have it for a little bit. Ankh was used by Variety and the Meditation, so those are 2 key relics now.
Yarkor slowed, but dashes away. No root from Genetics. Still have Scarab's Blessing. Still have Netrioid's ultimate as well. Jump out from Captain Twig, who's Fear No Evil. Is back up.
Straight
Looks
back
like
to
Genetics
fire.
wants to leave.
And it's time for them to just commit to the objective. I mean, how many times can they get relics and ultimates and then reset and just take the fight instead? At some time, you got to actually commit.
And Cheeto's got his ultimate again around this Fire Giant. Let's see if the Searing Pain makes a big difference. Put some pain onto the Camelot Kings. Genetics backs away. And so do the Atlantis Leviathans. We are slow playing this one.
I'm losing it, Dave. What's the
big
point of picking the
reset.
Raw if you're not going to snipe the FG, or at least try and force them in?
Sure.
And use the snipe offensively. But part of the problem is that I just don't think it's dealing enough damage with a little bit more power. You know, if he goes Doom Orb or something like that early, then that hits a lot harder.
And look at this. The Leviathans have shuffled their feet around the Fire
know
Giant
now.
for long enough. But the Camelot Kings have pulled this one slow. Watch out for Shinto.
They got it.
Fire Giant goes down, and it's the Camelot Kings who call the Leviathans on their slow play around the objective. But now you've got to get out, and get out the Kings will.
Just unacceptable for the Atlantis Leviathans to have this type of composition that wants to plant their feet and fight you and bring everyone in. At some point, you just have to commit.
Those things would
and
freak me out.
In game?
Look at those chompers he's
That's
got
right.
on the player poster
Munch.
right there. He's munching on you for sure, but not in Smite, man.
No.
You just got to do it better.
Yarkor, now is the time to fight, says the solo laner, the RDO, walking in for the Atlantis Leviathan, surging behind.
Nice.
That's a big Fear No Evil from Captain Twig. No follow-up on it, though, from the Atlantis Leviathans. And we're playing on thin margins here in game number 5. All 5 members of the Kings with FG, and they're looking towards the mid lane.
And having no Fear No Evil and no Through the Realms is big, plus beads for Netrioid use. That was a really good engage for Yarkor. It doesn't cost them a lot.
What's Panatom looking for here? Are you looking for the back line? You looking for Netrioid and big man?
They see him.
Gonna be difficult to find that engage. Pings out on the Kali, and Variety says, "Don't worry, fellas, I got this." He'll walk his way into the jungle just to make sure to keep tabs on Panatom. This is a defense put up around a tier 2 tower for the Atlantis Leviathans. Pull in onto Captain Twig. That's big from Wrong You. The knockup just shy on the back end. Genetics taken low. Searing Pain just to the left. Scarab's Blessing is out, and it's on Genetics himself. But Yarkor is taken low in the meantime as well. Panatom sees an opening on right, but he's not happy with the size.
Now, Fire Giant still sustaining up the Camelot Kings, but it really can't compete with the sustain from the Leviathans. But it takes some time in order to get it up there and get those health bars healthy again.
Captain Twig has Fear No Evil. That is back off of cooldown.
Another pull!
In on a Netrioid, and Wrong You's hitting them all. As Yarkor walks forward, Panatom into the destruction, and he has got no HP on the back end of this fight. Variety now able to walk forward. Searing Pain comes back off of cooldown for Shinto, but you gotta give up this tower.
Man, Rongyu is hitting pull after pull, and they're just not capitalizing on it. The damage just not there from the Leviathans. The King's still going.
And they are walking into this mid lane Phoenix, and there is no answer for the Atlantis Leviathans. In the Camelot Kings, you're playing with fire.
They've got all the anti-heal in the world, so now you have to change your mindset as the Kali. It has to be, I am trading my life for the VIP of the enemy team. And on a Fire Giant siege, it is always, always, always the Hunter.
It is, and it might need to be the Hunter here into the left side. Phoenix, Fear No Evil's out, and that's on to 2 of the Atlantis Leviathans. Big knock-up on the back end, and that's Wrong You yet again setting up for the rest of his team, but yet again, there is no follow-up on these, or for the support of the Atlantis Leviathans.
And yet again, the Leviathans are late to a Phoenix siege, and I have no idea how this continues to happen. I mean, that is the primary thing you've got to worry about, is making sure you don't lose Phoenixes for free.
Soul Reaver, hopefully that's going to be enough damage for Shinto, because you don't get a big damaging item to finish off that build. Rod of Asclepius will finalize things for Shinto. Already upgraded that starter item. So you're going to need those Searing Pains. Well, I mean, they've been coming up frequently.
Sure.
Suppose abundance is the name of the game here for Shinto.
Quantity over quality on those ultimates for sure. And here we go on the Fire Giant once again.
And
the
this
Camelot
one-
Kings. It is enhanced. and they don't have the secure, they don't have great DPS either.
Remember, they're still sustained for the Leviathans. That's where you can win out in these engagements. You back up, you let Rongyu heal you up, you let Shinto heal you up. But you don't have time to dance around the FG and sustain fight after fight after fight. You got Tiamat minions and fire minions on left. You got Tiamat minions walking into the mid lane. You've got to do something soon if you're the Atlantis Leviathans. The answer might be back off and clear up the waves. The Camelot Kings will be happy to take an enhanced Fire Giant for free. Fire minions have reached their way to the left Phoenix line. You have sent back Panatom into your base. You're now maybe looking at a steal attempt for Shinto. Fire Giant now gets pulled by the Kings.
And again, their DPS not great, but all Variety has to do is worry about where Shinto is and call out his health and where he's going.
Reset is the Fire Giant. The Camelot Kings dancing in and out of the pit, so not fully reset, not fully sustaining itself back up. Now back to the Fire Giant. Go. The Camelot Kings. The enhanced FG is low, and they have left it. The fight is going to happen instead. Your core has separated things out. What happened to Variety's HP bar? The rest of the Leviathans in range. Shinto holding on to that searing pain. And instead, Captain Twig blinks in, does not take the monkey toss, and the Kings will leave.
And the mid Phoenix is up, but Panatom is here, which means that that left side is still vulnerable.
Left side Phoenix still in a state of dismay. Rangyu's got to use the beats. He'll walk out of the back of this fight. Your core taken low. Fear no evil finds a backline, but Captain Twig can't finish off any of the kills. Variety able to get one. Panatom jumps into the back, but he is abducted, and he is dead. The Camelot Kings have found two.
2 for 1, and the Kali's one of them. This is huge for the Camelot Kings. Shinto's ultimate is down. His steal potential is worse, and they've got to answer these fire minions. I think the Camelot Kings have outlasted the siege from the Leviathans and should earn themselves an enhanced Fire Giant as their prize.
God, and you do not want to let this Titan get lower than it needs to. That just opens up the door to a quick Titan call for the Camelot Kings. So the enhanced Fire Giant will go on everyone but Captain Twig, who found a big Fear No Evil to start off that fight. If you're the Leviathans, you're at least getting your Phoenixes back. The mid will be back, the left will be back as well. But the right might not be. You're
left isn't back either.
With Yarkor and Panatom, you're fighting without your solo, without your jungle. Left respawns, but your mid laner's got to go over.
Yeah, right's gone. And that was your healthiest one. You know, if you're going to give one up, nice pull, but it's just Zapman here. Variety's fine.
Tiamat minions too.
If you're going to give one up, you should just give up left. Yes, it's worse positionally, but at least you've got a full health Phoenix. That left side Phoenix is never going to be the same.
Away from your Titan, if you're the Atlantis Leviathans, because the Camelot Kings group up, they're going to make their way in there. You got Oni Fire minions pushing down the right side. You thought you had a head-scratching question around the FG and who's going to go back, who's going to defend these minions. Somebody's got to answer that same question, and you're in your own base. You're going to have a 5-man grouping from the Camelot Kings here on the left side of the map. Yarkor left alone, and his health bar is gone, but the Phoenix melts quicker. The Camelot Kings got what they came for on left. Panatom looking for the fight, jumps in, gets the stun, but there's nothing to be had. 2-man Fear No Evil from Captain Twig, but Zapman, he's left alone here on the left, and he's got to dash away.
This right side Fire Oni wave has to be answered. That would have killed the Titan basically on its own, and that buys plenty of time for the Camelot Kings to set up in mid. This last bird is toast.
Yeah, that is a chunky amount of damage making its way onto the mid lane. Phoenix, Rongyu, he's got no beats. Yarkor walks forward. Camelot Kings don't take any damage from that searing pain. Shinto's got to wait for that one to come back off of cooldown. Now the Leviathans, they're kiting their way backwards.
Big stun.
The Camelot Kings, they have gone 10 games in the last 2 days, and the 10th game will be their ticket to the grand finals if they can win one more fight. Captain Twig, he's got the first onto Yarkor, but Variety, he's low in the back line. Panatom, he is abducted back into the awaiting arms of his team, and the Camelot Kings, they will rout the Leviathans, and they will go to the Smite World Championship in the grand finals of Phase 3.
Yeah, they do it and they pull the trigger as fast as possible. And it's why as well I said momentum was a big thing in this game. Leviathans pulled Fire Giant twice, kind of scared, back off, and then eventually they're pulling it for so long that their farm comes up, they need to back, reset, get mana, buy items, and whatnot, and then, Kings just say, like, ooh, they're giving us a little bit of space here, let's pull the trigger right now. They do it, they get Fire Giant, catch them sleeping right under their noses, and then run away with the game from there.
And the absolute insanity of Variety going on to this Sobek, it's a god we don't see very often. What a way to do so here in 5 games.
That's right. I hope we can get back and get the the full screen view or the full room view of that pop off, because it just reminded me of the old Smite Masters Variety pop off at the opposite side, like in this very room, popping off at whoever he had just beaten as well. I think he did the same thing. I don't necessarily think he'll be allowed sound on that clip because it'll just be a bunch of bleeps, but a great moment for them.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of yelling. But more than anything, The Camelot Kings come out on top, 35.5 on the Battleground of the Gods. Let's take a look at the bracket to see what all has gone through this weekend so far. And then obviously the most coveted match coming up tomorrow morning. Tartarus Titans, Camelot Kings in the grand finals of the Phase 3 playoffs here in Season 8. A 3-2 win over the Leviathans, a 3-2 win over the Scarabs. Get the Kings here. Tartarus Titans, they get their win over the Dragons 3-1, who 3-0'd the Bolts earlier on in the weekend. And now we get to see these two teams clash it out in our grand finals tomorrow. Let's take a look at the schedule. That way you guys can get a nice little reminder as to when that's all going through. It'll be 11 a.m. ET, same time that we started every single day so far this weekend. So make sure we're not starting any later. We're starting same time that we've been going through. So make sure that you are tuning in at that time because you do not want to miss this. A team that finally got its first chance on land and came out of the gate swinging hard and swinging fast. Now they get to go up against the Tartarus Titans, a team with a very similar play style to the Atlantis Leviathans. It's something, we joked about. You cover up the screen of what the Leviathans picked, and, man, that's kind of a Titans-looking draft over here. But now we get to see how they get to go against the masters of that meta.
That's right. They got to practice. That feels so good for them. And I do believe since Kings were on the other side of the bracket, they would have been scrimming Titans as well. So.